Chapter 1541. He hated her for pushing Guan Kui off the stage, even though she hadn't done it. But, when everyone was pointing fingers and everyone was certain that it was the truth, no matter what Yi Yuyu said, how she explained, and how she repented, Shen Luo and believed her without a doubt. Once Shen Luo and made up his mind, it was difficult to change it no matter what. Yi Yuyu knew that no matter how much she resented and hated him, she was powerless to change anything. That feeling of helplessness persisted for a long time. Even now, Yi Yuyu still hadn't considered whether Shen Luo and still liked her or loved her. After so many years, the extravagant hopes of the past had vanished into thin air. When Guan Kui heard Yi Yuyu's words, she stared at her. After a long time, she suddenly laughed. Yi Yuyu, sometimes I really pity you. What do you mean? All these years, Shen Luo and has been by your side. God knows how much I envy you, but you've wasted all that time. If it were me, I would have used those 7 or 8 years to keep him in my clutches. Guan Kui's face was a mixture of regret, relief, and schadenfreude. It's all because of me that you're in this state. Ha ha ha. Yi Yuyu's lips pursed tightly. Her emotions were complicated. Yi Yuyu should have berated Guan Kui for being a mistress, a despicable person, and a shameless person. After playing the fool a few years ago, Guan Kui had planted a thorn in their hearts that was difficult to pull out. It had caused the distance between them to grow further and further apart. Every time she got close, she would be viciously stabbed. All these years, her life had been very difficult. Everything had been caused by Guan Kui. Yet, on such an important occasion, Shen Luo and had escaped. Guan Kui's laughter grew louder and louder. Tears streamed down her face. Yi Yuyu, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The exquisite makeup on her face was stained by her tears. Her cries grew louder and louder. The pure white wedding dress fell to the ground. The bottle in Guan Kui's hand fell to the ground with a dull thud. Kelda Duck's yellow bottle bounced a few times and rolled to Yi Yuyu's feet. Guan Kui squatted down and wailed uncontrollably. I'm so jealous of you. I'm so jealous. Guan Kui buried his face between his legs. His muffled voice was filled with sorrow and desolation. The bride, who was supposed to be smiling and happily accepting everyone's blessings, was now crying helplessly in the room. Yi Yuyu felt her heart wrench. She looked at her with her lips tightly pursed. She lowered her eyes and looked at the cute Kelda Duck water bottle on the ground. Squatting down, he picked up the cup and opened the lid. It was full of water. She took 2 steps forward and squatted down. She reached out her hand and gently said, everything will pass. Shen Luo and left today because he was irresponsible. This kind of man can't give you a future, and he's not worthy of your love. Guan Kui buried her head in her hands. Her sobs gradually died down. She raised her head and looked at Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu held the glass of water in her hand. Her eyes were filled with sympathy as she said, we all deserve better. She gently pushed the glass of water forward. Her expression was the same as ever. When Guan Kui had lost the dance competition and was crying in her room, Yi Yuyu had done the same thing. She had comforted her by her side. Chapter 1542. It had a cute design and a funny pair of eyes that seemed to be laughing at her. Guan Kui reached out and took the glass from her. She suddenly smiled and said, it's still open. Thank you, Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu didn't know how to react. She instinctively looked at the glass in front of her. It's still open. What does that mean? Without waiting for Yi Yuyu to react, Guan Kui raised the glass and started drinking. She drank the water a little too quickly. Droplets of water flowed down her chin and onto Guan Kui's collarbone. Guan Kui's wedding gown seeped deep into her skin. Yi Yu squatted in front of Guan Kui. She could clearly hear the gurgling sound coming from her throat. Guan Kui gulped water down her throat. The droplets of water from the corners of her eyes kept flowing down. Guan Kui tossed the cup aside and wiped her chin forcefully. She said, "Do you know how much I envy you? Ever since I was young, I've always strived to do my best in everything. My father always hoped that I would be stronger than most people, but I lost my mother when I was young." Yi Yu's eyes widened. As Guan Kui spoke, she stumbled to her feet and said, "It said that my mother died during childbirth when she was giving birth to me. In this world, I'm Daddy's only family. I'm his only flesh and blood. That's why he has high expectations of me. It's so high that I don't even have time for myself. It's impossible for me to do what I like." Yi Yu looked at her and slowly stood up. She gently said, "You did it, Kui. You're outstanding." "So what? I'm outstanding, but the person I like doesn't like me at all. I grew up with Shenluo, but he can get along with you so well. From the moment you appeared, all his attention was on you. Regardless of whether you were in primary or secondary school, everyone knew that you were the best of friends. As for me, I'm nothing more than a genius who relied on hard work to gain everyone's approval." Yi Yu looked at her with a complicated expression. Her heart was filled with sorrow. Guan Kui was actually jealous of me. Before I entered university, I always thought that Shenluo and I were the most compatible, but he made such a wish on his birthday. Do you still remember what he wished for?" Yi Yu didn't say a word. She remembered, of course she remembered. "I want to be with Yi Yu. I want Yi Yu to be my girlfriend." This birthday wish was said in front of all his friends, and also in front of all their friends. At that time, there was a burst of cheers and jeers. Yi Yu blushed and ran out. He immediately caught up with her, hugged her, and kissed her in the dark. Everything seemed to happen naturally. Without any deliberate announcement, the two of them were together as it should be. However, something like that happened later on. Everyone knows that you two are a match made in heaven. I can only smile and wish you well. I can't show any unhappiness." Guan Kui laughed. She had a sickly, deranged look on her face. "Heaven knows. I'm so jealous of you that I'm about to go crazy. I really hope that every time the two of you hug each other, you get run over by a car or struck by lightning." Chapter 1543. Fortunately, my chance came. Guan Kui smiled as she slowly backed away. "You organized an adventure in the wilderness. I knew very well how bad the environment in the mountains was. I knew that you wouldn't be able to take it, so I deliberately brought you up the mountain." Pfft. Guan Kui's eyes were filled with schadenfreude. "I didn't expect it to suddenly rain." Yi Yu had already known about it, but hearing it from Guan Kui's own mouth still shocked her. She looked at Guan Kui in disbelief and said, "You were only 20 years old at that time." "I didn't know it would rain, but I did it on purpose." Guan Kui laughed wickedly. "I purposely walked behind so that Shenluo could settle down the others so that I could drag you down with me." Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Guan Kui as though she was a lunatic. "You're crazy." "Sure." Guan Kui placed a finger to her lips and said, "Don't say that. I just did something that none of you could imagine." Her eyes turned into crescents as she looked at Yi Yu and said, "I didn't expect that after so many years, this incident would still have such an impact." Guan Kui's footsteps gradually backed away. Her footsteps were slow, and her legs were trembling. She stood unsteadily. Yi Yu looked at her appearance and felt extremely sorrowful. She looked at her legs, which were covered by the wedding gown, with pity and asked, "Is it worth it now?" Guan Kui's legs, which she had once been most proud of, were now completely crippled. In this lifetime, Guan Kui's dance would probably be difficult to pick up again. "You set me up, and I'm still standing here, safe and sound. But you lost more than just a pair of legs." Her life, which was supposed to be brilliant and glorious, had been destroyed by a single thought of hers all those years ago. The good thing was that she could still walk. Everything wasn't too bad. "Guan Kui, what happened in the past is in the past. I don't want to pursue it." Yi Yu looked at her and said, "Now that things have come to this, the damage has already been done. I won't feel anything even if you tell me these things now." Yi Yu took a step forward and said, "Forget about it. We all deserve a better life." As she spoke, she looked down at Guan Kui's legs and said softly, "If you do your rehabilitation well, you might be able to stand up again and walk normally. As for Shen Luoben, if he's not suitable, he's not suitable. No matter how much you force him, he won't be able to stay." Guan Kui cracked a smile, revealing a row of bright red teeth. When Yi Yu saw it, she was shocked. Blood trickled down the corner of Guan Kui's mouth. His eyes, which were already somewhat bloodshot, suddenly became bright red and glistening. Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. Her hair stood on end. Guan Kui laughed out loud and replied, "You're still as hypocritical as ever. But I still have to thank you. Some things were destined not to end well from the very beginning. I was already prepared for the worst. Everything that you owe me, it's about time that you return it to me." Yi Yu, as he spoke, he turned around and unlocked the door. Then, his body fell heavily to the ground. He fell to the ground, blood spurting out of his mouth and splashing onto the ground. "Ah!" A scream pierced through the bustling hustle and bustle. And the one who was knocking on this thin piece of paper was her daughter. Yi Yu stood rooted to the ground. Her face was as white as a sheet. Her body was cold, and her limbs were weak. When she saw Yi Tian, she felt as if she had found someone to rely on. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stammered, "Mom, Pa." Chapter 1545. Yi Tian glared at Yi Yu with red eyes. Her breathing quickened as she yelled at Yi Yu, "How could you be so vicious? Kui is already in such a state. What threat does she pose to you? How could you want to kill her like that? You're a jinx." Yi Tian had directed Guan Yanhong's words at Yi Yu. Jinx, jinx, these three words reverberated in everyone's ears. Yi Yu covered her face. The tears in her eyes rolled down her cheeks as she looked at Yi Tian. Suddenly, she smiled. There was sorrow and desolation in her smile. It was a look of despair that made one's heart ache. Looking at Yi Tian, Yi Yu raised her hand and used all the strength in her body to return a vicious slap to Yi Tian. No one had expected such a turn of events. The crowd was in an uproar. Isn't that her mother? Oh my God! Is that mother and daughter fighting each other? Yi Tian had not expected Yi Yu to do such a thing. She looked at her in disbelief. She quickly regained her composure and roared, "Do you know what you've done? I'm your mother." As Yi Tian screamed, she raised her hand and swung it at Yi Yu's face. Before the slap could land, it was blocked by a large hand. The slap landed squarely on a sturdy arm. Li Jinan pushed Yi Tian. Caught off guard, Yi Tian stumbled back a few steps. Yi Yu was on the verge of breaking down. When she saw Li Jinan, she wailed loudly. She threw herself into his embrace and yelled, "I didn't. It wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Believe me. It wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me. Yi Yuyu's words were laced with helplessness and desolation. Li Jinnan's expression was tense. He pulled her into his embrace and said, I believe you. Don't cry. I'm here. I'm here. Yi Yuyu's heart calmed down. She looked up and cried even harder. She asked me to boil the water. At first, I didn't dare help her, but she couldn't hold it properly. The water dropped. After she drank it, she started vomiting blood. It wasn't my fault. It was her own fault. This explanation was so baffling that no one around could understand what was going on. Li Jinnan didn't quite understand what she was saying, but he didn't say anything. He held her in his arms and said, Don't be afraid. I'll prove your innocence. Guan Kui is already in such a state. There's only you and her in the room. Now that she's been sent to the hospital by your father, we don't even know if she's dead or alive. How dare you collude with outsiders to beat me up? Yi Yuyu, I really didn't expect you to be so despicable. You're exactly the same as your dead father. Yi Tian gritted her teeth and roared. By doing so, Yi Yuyu had already been convicted. But, isn't that Yi Yuyu's mother? Not only did he beat her indiscriminately, but the words he had just uttered were enough to kill Yi Yuyu. While he was shocked, he was also furious. When she saw Yi Tian raise her hand to slap Yi Yuyu, the rage she felt was about to burst out of her chest. She wanted nothing more than to strangle her to death in front of everyone. However, he could not. The current situation was too disadvantageous for Yi Yuyu. He couldn't do anything. Any one of those incidents could be used to frame Yi Yuyu. He turned his head. His sharp, almond-shaped eyes seemed to be coated with frost. Chapter 1546. I've wondered more than once whether you're Guan Kui's biological mother or Yi Yuyu's biological mother. Li Jinnan looked at her coldly. There was no softness in his expression. Yi Tian stood and looked at Li Jinnan confidently as she said, I'm Yi Yuyu's mother, but I know what's good and what's bad. I'm on the side of reason, not the side of family. What is reason? What is family? Li Jinnan's expression darkened. You abandoned your family for money, and that's family. You indiscriminately slapped your own daughter, and that's reason. What a joke. Yi Tian was incensed by his words and retorted, What has that got to do with you? Who do you think you are? Yi Yuyu is my daughter. I can discipline her however I want. Who are you to interfere? Furthermore, she was indeed in the wrong. As a mother, shouldn't I slap her? Don't make it sound so righteous. Yi Yuyu roared. Her face was red as she glared at Yi Tian. She wiped her face forcefully and said, You stood at the top of the public's opinion and condemned the person that everyone blamed. They said that Yi Yuyu pushed Guan Kui off the cliff, and you slapped me and chased me out of the house. You didn't even give me a chance to explain myself and accused me of the crime. Did it ever cross your mind that I was your daughter at that time? You left of your own accord. No one chased you away. Yi Tian said matter-of-factly. Don't you dare accuse me now. What happened all those years ago was your fault. You harmed Kui's legs. She danced so well back then, but now she can't even stand. The source of this tragedy is you, Yi Yuyu. No. Yi Yuyu screamed. It wasn't me at all. Guan Kui fell on her own. She wanted to frame me, but she didn't dare to go through the legal process. She could only put herself in a weak position so that everyone could criticize me on a moral level. I would never do something like that. Yi Yuyu, you're my daughter. I know you best. Yi Tian looked at Yi Yuyu and said, You weren't that kind of person in the past, but you've changed completely. Ha ha ha. Yi Yuyu was even more enraged. Her face was flushed with anger, but her tears were gone. She yelled, "It's like this every time. You want to be a good stepmother, and a good wife. Don't take me for a fool. You pushed me out in exchange for a stable position in the Guan family. You're afraid of living a poor life, so you're especially afraid of losing everything." Yi Tian hadn't expected Yi Yuyu to suddenly say something like that. The truth that she had been hiding all this while had been exposed in an instant. It was as if a bloody scab had been peeled off, and blood flowed freely. More than a decade ago, you abandoned your husband with a child, but Yi Zhenhua has not forgotten you even after so many years. There is still someone waiting for you in Cloud Town. Yi Yuyu laughed sarcastically. But, from the looks of it, you're a heartless woman. You're not worthy of Yi Zhenhua at all. Yi Yuyu. Yi Tian roared in anger. She could feel the gazes of the people around her. Her face burned. I'm your mother. Yi Tian's words caused a commotion in the crowd. The crowd parted, and more than a dozen police officers walked in. The leader looked around and asked, "Who is Yi Yuyu?" When Yi Yuyu saw that, her body trembled. Chapter 1547. Yi Yuyu raised her head slightly and was caught off guard by a pair of deep, dark eyes. However, there was an indescribable coldness in his eyes. The coldness was directed at Yi Tian. Yi Yuyu sniffed and wrapped her arms around his waist. In a soft, choked voice, she said, "I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I believe you, but you still have to go with them." "I'll think of a way to get you out and clear your name," Li Jinan said as he held her in his arms. "It's just a small episode. When you think back on it in the future, you'll find life to be very interesting. So, don't be afraid. There's no need to be afraid. An upright person isn't afraid of a crooked shadow." Yi Yuyu wiped away her tears and nodded her head. The police officer asked again, "Who is Yi Yuyu?" She is. Yi Tian pointed at Yi Yuyu and asked, "May I ask who called the police?" When the police officer saw Yi Tian, he only glanced at her briefly before quickly coming forward to look at Yi Yuyu. Very quickly, a few police officers came forward and surrounded Yi Yuyu. A few more people walked into the room where Guan Kui had just met with a mishap. The leader of the police officers said to Yi Yuyu, "It was Mr. Guan Yanhong who called the police. At present, we suspect that Miss Yi Yuyu is trying to kill his daughter, Miss Guan Kui. Furthermore, there is a clear motive for the crime and evidence of the crime. Miss Guan Kui is currently in the emergency room and has lost all signs of life. The situation is very serious. Miss Yi Yuyu, please come with us. Guan Kui's life is in danger." "That can't be. It's that serious." "But Yi Yuyu doesn't look like that kind of person." "No one would look like that kind of person." Only Yi Yuyu and Guan Kui were in the room where Guan Kui met with a mishap. Now that Guan Kui is in such a state, who else could it be if not Yi Yuyu? The commotion around them grew louder. Yi Yuyu felt the blood coursing through her veins as she said, "It wasn't me. I didn't." There was an uproar. There were only the two of you in the room. "If it wasn't you, could it have been her?" "It's her. It's her," Yi Yuyu shouted. When she said that, everyone around her scoffed. "Today is Guan Kui's wedding day. Do you think she'll commit suicide and blame it on you?" "That's right. She's a bride today, the happiest moment of her life. You must be jealous of her, so you hurt her." No. If it's not me, you can investigate. The innocent will be innocent, and the turbid will be turbid. If I don't have it, then I don't. Yi Yuyu was on the verge of breaking down. Her voice was laced with grievance. She tried to explain herself hysterically, but she didn't gain the slightest bit of trust. The surrounding people looked at her with deep disbelief. This scene was the same as 7 or 8 years ago. She had explained it to everyone, but everyone had different expressions. He looked at her as if he were looking at a criminal. His gaze made Yi Yu feel pain and despair. The feeling from 7 or 8 years ago returned to her. She felt a chill run down her spine, and her body trembled. Chapter 1548. With that one sentence, the surrounding people all quietened down at the same time. They looked around and looked at each other in dismay. They had indeed seen the groom in America. As one of the main characters, Shenluo, and hadn't been there. Even when the bride had been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment, he hadn't shown up. Something was wrong. It's hard to say whether or not it was a suicide. We still need to investigate further, but Miss Yi needs to come with us now, the leader of the police officers said. Another police officer stepped forward to handcuff Yi Yu and said, "If Miss Guan's life can be saved, everything else can be discussed. Please go. Seal off the scene and disperse the crowd." "Yes, sir." Yi Yu's hands were cuffed with cold handcuffs. The unfamiliar feeling went straight to the bottom of her heart. She turned her head helplessly to look at Li Jinnan. Li Jinnan looked back at her and nodded his head silently. He mouthed, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." Yi Yu turned her head back. Her heart was racing, and her body was still trembling. How could I not be afraid? Guan Kui had drunk that glass of water and vomited blood. Had she planned to commit suicide all along so that she could frame me? Or perhaps Guan Kui was just trying to hurt herself so that everyone would condemn me and that I would no longer have a place in this world. If the investigation was true, the crime would be established. If nothing happened to Guan Kui, she would be guilty of intentional injury, intentional murder, and attempted murder. If something happened to Guan Kui, it would be considered intentional murder. She would be sentenced to life imprisonment or even death. At that thought, Yi Yu bit down on her lip and sobbed softly. It wasn't me. I didn't want to harm her. It was her own fault, don't worry. We're still investigating. If you're innocent, we'll definitely clear your name. Yes, the innocent will be innocent, and the guilty will be innocent. In any case, she was now a suspect. Since the police had been mobilized, they would definitely clear her name. Definitely. Definitely. Yi Yu was taken into the police car. Li Jinnan followed closely behind. When they arrived at the police station, Yi Yu was taken into custody. All her belongings were confiscated. Li Jinnan couldn't even see her face. His heart was heavy. This was the capital. He had been retired for several years. At present, he had no say in this situation. He picked up his phone and called Li Beixing. The call was quickly answered. "Hello. Does my brother miss me?" Li Beixing seemed to be in a good mood. Li Jinnan gave him a simple explanation of the situation, and Li Beixing's carefree attitude disappeared completely. "Are you sure she's innocent?" "I'm very sure. She wouldn't have the heart to do something like that." At the same time, Li Jinnan felt a little helpless. At the same time, he blamed himself. "It's my fault. I thought that since it's her wedding day, she would definitely stop." Everyone knew that Guan Kui and Shenluo and had gone through a lot to get together. At the very least, they couldn't ruin their own wedding, could they? It was obvious that he had underestimated Guan Kui and overestimated Yi Yu. Chapter 1549. Thank you, big brother. Li Jinnan rubbed his eyes and sighed. Li Beixing sensed Li Jinnan's emotions and consoled him. "Don't worry. As long as she didn't do such a thing, nothing will happen to her. You were right not to be impulsive. This matter can be big, but it can also be small. First, you have to be calm before you can act. Yeah. Li Jinan understood that, but he still couldn't get rid of the pain in his heart. How long have you been with this girl? Li Beixing's tone was solemn as he asked. Everything was fine. Why would that person target her? I don't want to say anything, but what if, and I mean what if, that girl isn't innocent? What do you plan to do? That's impossible. Li Jinan was very certain. She couldn't have done such a thing. The girl who is being sent for emergency treatment is her stepsister. She has a serious mental illness. My girlfriend is her new husband's ex-wife. There was a conflict between them before. Why? Li Beixing exclaimed. Ex-wife? Your girlfriend has been married before. Yeah, a marriage of convenience. Li Jinan's head was aching. He leaned back in the car seat and narrowed his eyes. It's the kind of marriage of convenience where nothing can be done. D*MN, you guys are quite fashionable. How are you going to tell your family about this? Li Beixing felt like he was on the verge of breaking down. If you tell our mom that your girlfriend was married, divorced, and is now suspected of murder and locked up in the capital's prison, what do you think her reaction will be? Li Jinnan's throbbing head was already throbbing with pain. He felt even more uncomfortable. I don't know. Now is not the time to be thinking about such things. The most important thing is to think of a way to get Yi Yu out and clear her name. Big brother, can you do that? Li Beixing frowned. After a long moment, he asked, are you sure she wouldn't do such a thing? She wouldn't. Good. Now, you have to find a lawyer. I remember that second brother's wife's parents are in the capital. The Rome family's status in the capital is unquestionable. You can get your second sister-in-law to help you. I've heard of the Guan family that you mentioned. This Guan Yanhong is not to be trifled with. He's a ruthless man. Furthermore, he only has one daughter. I'm afraid he won't let this matter rest. That's right. Using Su Qianxi's connections, Li Jinan had never thought about that. However, judging from the current situation, most of his, Li Beixing's, and Li Xiqing's connections were in Kingstown. Guan Yanhong's status in the capital was not low. If they had to deal with it on their own, it would be troublesome. However, with the addition of a general from the capital, things would be much simpler. Li Jinan thought about it for a moment before replying, I got it. I'm hanging up. Li Beixing, don't think too much about it. Since she's your girlfriend, of course we have to save her. I'm just afraid that you'll get yourself into trouble, and then it'll be hard to explain to your family. Grandpa's health isn't good, so don't spread this news back home. Yi, Li, Su, he knows that you. Yi. Su, Yi, Li Jikno Li. Chapter 1550. That's right. It would have been fine if it was just a grandfather. More importantly, there was more to it than that. Li Jinnan's headache intensified. He replied, got it. I'm hanging up. He hung up the phone and called Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi seemed to be busy. When she heard Li Jinnan's request, she agreed without hesitation. Li Jinnan drove back to the hotel where the wedding had just taken place. The venue was cordoned off, and the police were coming and going. The crowd had yet to disperse. When they saw Li Jinnan arrive, many people started whispering and pointing at him. That's the boyfriend of the culprit just now. He's quite handsome. Why would he fall for that kind of guy? I'm better than her. Sigh. He's young and promising, but he's blind. Li Jinan acted as if he hadn't heard the words of the people around him. He walked up to a police officer and asked, "What's the situation now?" The police officer looked up. When he saw that it was Yi Yuyu's boyfriend, his attitude darkened. He replied, "Other than the makeup artist's fingerprints, there are also Guan Kui's and Yi Yuyu's fingerprints." "What do you mean?" Li Jinan had a bad feeling about this. In other words, other than the makeup artist and the other necessary personnel, Madame Yi Yuyu entered the room more often. When he saw the expression on Li Jinan's face, the police officer felt a little sympathetic. He took out the photo of the evidence and said, "This young lady isn't simple. There are very few fingerprints in there. Even the door doesn't have her fingerprints on it. However, she still managed to leave her mark on the most crucial item." As she spoke, she raised her head and took out a Polaroid photo. She continued, "This cup is filled with lethal poison. It takes effect very quickly. Half of the water has been drunk and spilled on the ground. However, the amount of poison that Miss Guan Kui drank is enough to be fatal. Although she has been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment, from the looks of it, she is still in critical condition. You are Yi Yuyu's boyfriend, aren't you? You'll have to come back with us to give a statement." Li Jinan's face darkened. In a low voice, he said, "T. If she had such a mind, she wouldn't have lived for so long. What a bunch of fools. They don't even know that they're being played by a woman. Their brains must have been kicked by a donkey." Hearing that, the policeman lost his attitude and said, "I think you're the one who's being fooled by a woman. Miss Yi has a criminal record. 7 years ago, she pushed her stepsister off the cliff when she just came of age. Although the Guan family won't hold her responsible, it's still a fact even if you ignore it." Li Jinan was filled with rage when he heard that. He laughed coldly and said, "Can't you think about why she didn't harm anyone else but Guan Kui? If she was really that kind of person, why had she been so well behaved all these years? Why hadn't anyone been harmed by her? Why had Guan Kui gotten her into trouble the moment she returned? Can't Guan Kui fall off the cliff and frame Yi Yuyu? Can't Guan Kui drink the poison and run out to put on a show?" Li Jinan's tone wasn't very pleasant. The police officer was infuriated and retorted, "Who in their right mind would do such a thing? Ha! Don't forget that this woman is a lunatic." When he said that, the police officer was rendered speechless. Chapter 1551. When Li Jinan was brought to the police station, he was asked a few questions about Yi Yuyu's daily life. How could Li Jinan say anything else? He insisted that she was a good citizen and that she was extremely kind. After a round of questioning, Li Jinan's attitude improved a lot. He was able to converse with the police officers in the station. In order to build a good relationship with them, Li Jinan even brought up the names of Li Xiqing, Li Beixing, Li Sun, and Li Xiao. When the people in the station heard that Li Jinan's background was so impressive, they all felt much better. They felt so much better that when he asked to see Yi Yuyu, they only looked at him for a while before letting him in. As he sat outside the visitation room, Li Jinan saw Yi Yuyu being brought in from afar. Her hands were handcuffed. When she walked, the handcuffs clanked against each other. Yi Yuyu was still dressed in the same clothes. She looked very cool, but all the jewelry on her body had been removed. Her hair was a mess, and the originally exquisite makeup on her face had been ruined. She looked very pathetic. Her eyes were red and swollen. When she saw Li Jinan, she bit her lip and quickly walked over. Her eyes were red as she looked at Li Jinan. It was as if a warm current had been injected into the place where she had been terrified and lost. Yi Yuyu's originally uneasy feelings were instantly soothed. As he watched Yi Yuyu sit down, Li Jinan said, "Tell me what happened. Don't leave out a single detail." Yi Yuyu's eyes were a little hot. She looked at Li Jinan and repeated what she had just said to the police officers. Li Jinan's brows furrowed together. He thought for a moment before asking, "You said that she asked you to boil the water, and you opened it for her?" Yi Yu nodded her head and replied, "At first, I didn't dare say it. I was afraid that she would frame me. But, she cried. She cried so miserably. She talked about our past. We really weren't like this in the past. She wasn't like this in the past either." Yi Yu's voice choked up. She lowered her head and said, "I felt a little sad when I saw her cry. Shen Luoan is a jerk. She was just bewitched by him. At the end of the day, she was just a pitiful person. She was abandoned and left alone. It was very pitiful. So, you gave it to her." Li Jinan took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and growled, "I really want to open your head and see if it's filled with water or tofu." After being yelled at, Yi Yu pursed her lips and didn't dare say another word. She looked up and saw Li Jinan's livid face. He lowered his head in silence. "She tricked you into drinking water because she wanted to leave your fingerprints, right?" Yi Yu didn't dare to look up at him. She nodded her head. She felt guilty and restless. What did she say after drinking the water? Yi Yu looked up and thought for a moment before replying. She said that I owed her so many years of debt. It's time for me to pay it back. What do you owe her? Li Jinan couldn't understand. What kind of hatred did she have to take revenge in this way? Furthermore, Guan Kui's extreme method had not only hurt Yi Yu, but it had also caused irreparable harm to herself. For example, when he fell off the cliff back then, or this time. Chapter 1552. Yi Yu pursed her lips. This was a question that had been on her mind for many years. What did she owe her? Perhaps too much. Ever since she had joined the Guan family, Guan Yanhong had always taken good care of her. She could tell that Guan Kui wasn't too happy when Guan Yanhong was treating her well. However, she still maintained a smile on her face and spoke as if nothing had happened. She might have stolen away some of her father's love. Ever since she had known Shen Luoan, he had always paid more attention to her. At that time, Yi Yu could sense that Guan Kui might have liked Shen Luoan. She might have stolen Shen Luoan. At the same time, Guan Kui had stolen the only family she had. Ever since they had joined the Guan family, Yi Tian had completely transformed from Yi Yu's mother to Guan Kui's mother. At first, she had harbored some fantasies about Yi Tian. After those slaps and those words, Yi Yu had completely given up on Yi Tian. Perhaps she had never treated Yi Tian as her own daughter. Perhaps Yi Tian only felt possessive and manipulative toward Yi Yu. Once Yi Yu left Yi Yu's control, things would change. Yi Yu didn't speak for a long time. Li Jinan was starting to get impatient. He said, "Don't tell me you don't know either." Yi Yu remained silent. After a long time, she finally said, "I might have stolen the person she liked." She liked Shen Luoan very much. She liked him very much. She liked him so much that she was willing to throw herself off the cliff and tell everyone that she was the one who had pushed her off Shen Luoan's side. She liked Yi Yu so much that, in order to consign Yi Yu to eternal damnation, she would drink poison and tell everyone that she was the one who had tried to kill her. Yi Yu could only passively choose to be framed. She was caught off guard by all sorts of attacks. Yi Yu didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Similarly, no one had given her the chance to do so. Even her biological mother was one of them. Li Jinan took a deep breath and asked, "All because of AB*TCH. You women are crazy." That's right. Women are like that. For a man, they can do anything. Yi Yu's lips twitched. Back then, I was equally crazy to marry Shenluo and Li Jinnan's face darkened. Are you still thinking about him? Yi Yu shook her head. No. After we divorced, our relationship was completely severed. At this moment, who knows where this guy has gone? He didn't appear at the wedding, and no one has seen him. He left a letter in the room and didn't even want the bride. How promising. Li Jinnan laughed sarcastically. Why didn't you say so earlier? Why did you have to wait until the last moment? Who are you putting on a show for? He really ran away from the wedding. Yi Yu looked at him in realization. Is it possible that he went to look for Enchanting? Yi Yu was right. Shenluo and had indeed gone to see Enchanting. However, Huaxia was so big that he had no idea where to start. According to Enchanting's registration information, she had gone to Suzhou. However, Suzhou was so big that it was not easy to find a person. When Shenluo and walked out of the airport, he felt that he was a little silly and pitiful. The surroundings were unfamiliar. There was not a single face that resembled Enchanting's. Chapter 1553. Shenluo and stood in the empty airport lobby for a while, at a loss as to what to do. He didn't know how long he stood there before an airport employee walked over with a polite smile. Hello, sir. Welcome to Suzhou. How may I help you? Shenluo and snapped out of his daze and looked at the employee. He shook his head gently and asked, How do I get to the taxi lane? Go straight. You'll see it when you turn left at the second intersection. Shenluo and nodded his head blankly and said, Thank you. He didn't have any luggage or backpack. Shenluo and was dressed in a bridegroom's suit. His hair was styled in a handsome and trendy style, but the expression on his face was so blank that no one could see the joy and happiness of a newlywed. The employee stared at his back for a long time before walking away. He turned to his colleague and said, I think I met a bridegroom just now. He was handsome, but he looked very sad. Shenluo and didn't realize that he was being whispered about. After he walked out, he gave the name of a random hotel and was taken to the place. After checking into the room, Shenluo and felt exhausted. It wasn't far from the capital to Jiangnan. However, his heart felt as though it had already crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. He was indescribably tired. After lying down, he didn't feel the slightest bit sleepy. Shenluo and looked at the snow-white ceiling. His mind was a mess. He shut his eyes tightly. He could clearly feel his heart beating heavily. Every beat was forceful. Every beat made him feel as though he was still alive. Was it really appropriate for such a person to be alive? If he returned to the capital, Guan Yanhong would definitely break his legs. He had already mentally prepared himself. After escaping, he realized that he was much more relaxed. He didn't love Guan Kui. It had been 6 hours since Guan Kui had been sent to the emergency room. Her stomach couldn't be any cleaner, but Guan Kui's vital signs still hadn't stabilized. This young and beautiful lady was once again lying in the emergency room. She was the subject of intensive care by all the doctors. Guan Yanhong cried out several times outside the emergency room. He couldn't calm down for a long time. He punched the wall, banged his head, and destroyed himself. The secretaries and relatives around her didn't know how to comfort her. With his only daughter in the emergency room, his life and death uncertain, Guan Yanhong was undoubtedly suffering the most. At this time, no matter how much anyone said, it would be useless. Unless Guan Kui could come back to life. After more than 6 hours, the door to the emergency room was finally opened. Guan Yanhong's eyes were bloodshot. He rushed forward and grabbed the doctor. Doctor, how is my daughter? The doctor didn't even have time to take off his mask. He was obviously shocked when he was grabbed. The doctor took off his mask and said, "We've tried our best." "What do you mean?" Guan Yanhong roared in disbelief. "What do you mean by that? What do you mean by trying your best? My daughter was just fine a moment ago. How could you not save her?" The doctor was startled by his roar and said, "I haven't finished speaking. Don't get agitated." Guan Yanhong was pulled back. Only then did the doctor dare to speak louder. "The patient is still unconscious, and his condition isn't looking good. If he can wake up within 48 hours, he'll be safe." Chapter 1554. Guan Yanhong wasn't any calmer than before. He rushed forward and grabbed the doctor by the collar. "I don't care what you do. My daughter can't die. Do you hear me? She can't die." Guan Yanhong's emotions were clearly unstable. The doctors and nurses in the room rushed forward and pulled his hand away. The people behind him immediately pulled him down. The doctor heaved a sigh of relief when he was pulled down, but he still said, "I can't guarantee that. It all depends on the patient's will to live and the state of her recovery. If you continue arguing like this, the patient won't be able to rest well." Who knows, Guan Yanhong couldn't take it anymore. His only daughter, who he had always relied on, had been reduced to this state in an instant. To Guan Yanhong, this was like a bolt from the blue. What was supposed to be a happy wedding had been ruined by A/B*TCH. While Guan Yanhong was filled with remorse and pain, he also felt a deep sense of hatred. Yi Yu. At a time like this, the most important thing was to ensure his daughter's safety. "I want to go in and see my daughter." It wasn't a plea or a statement. It was an order. His tone made the doctors feel displeased. The attending doctor said, "The patient needs silence. The most important thing now is to ensure that she gets absolute rest." Guan Yanhong looked at the attending doctor and growled, "I'm just going in to take a look. It won't be noisy. I'll be alone." His tone was harsh, and it made everyone feel even more dissatisfied and angry. But he was Guan Kui's father. Hearing that, the doctor finally nodded his head. Guan Yanhong rushed in immediately. He looked at the ashen-faced Guan Kui on the bed. Her heartbeat was steady, but it was obvious that she wasn't in a good state. Guan Yanhong's heart ached so much that he couldn't speak. His heart was filled with hatred for Yi Yu. 7 years ago, and now, she had laid her hands on his daughter twice in a row. Did she really think he was a decoration? The doctor walked in and waved at Guan Yanhong. "Come out for a moment." Guan Yanhong gazed longingly at his daughter a few more times before walking out of the room. The doctor closed the door and said softly, "The patient's condition isn't very good. Her will to live isn't very strong. My suggestion is that you find someone she cares about or someone who can awaken her will to live. Your daughter is supposed to be getting married today, right? You can ask her husband, or the person who framed her today, to come along." The doctor said very seriously, "Even if it's hatred, normal people will want to take revenge. Moreover, with your daughter's current condition, she needs external stimulation the most at this time." The thought of Yi Yu filled Guan Yanhong's heart with hatred, but the doctor's words had mentioned another person. Shen Luo. Little Su. Yes. Hurry up and find Shen Luo. Xiao Su hesitated and said, "Mr. Shen doesn't seem to be in the capital anymore." When Guan Yanhong heard that, he flew into a rage and retorted, "How is that possible? Today is his wedding day with Kei Yi. How could he not be in the capital? Furthermore, if he's not in the hotel, he's on his way here. Call him and ask him to come over immediately." Chapter 1555. It was a small envelope with the name Shenluo and written on it. When he saw it, Guan Yanhong had a bad feeling about it. He reached out, wanting to take the envelope, but in the next second, his hand froze in midair. Looking at Xiao Su, Guan Yanhong's expression darkened. He asked, "What's written inside?" Xiao Su shook her head. "I don't know. I didn't open it, but I think it was a wedding day." Leaving an envelope without seeing the person was obvious that it couldn't be anything good. Guan Yanhong's face was ashen. He took the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a notebook. There was only one line of words on it, making the paper look especially empty. "I'm sorry. I don't want to let you down." Those few words were enough to explain Shenluo An's intentions. Guan Yanhong was furious and roared, "What the hell is this? Shenluo An." Xiao Su was startled by Guan Yanhong's outburst. She pursed her lips and said, "I did a quick check." Mr. Shen chased the driver out of the wedding car and drove it to the airport. Guan Yanhong clenched his fist. The paper in his hand crumpled into a ball. "Find him for me." "Yes. Also, get a lawyer. I want to sue Yi Yu. Guan Yanhong's eyes were bloodshot. "I want her to die in prison." Xiao Su lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. She quickly agreed and left. The situation didn't look optimistic. Li Jinan had been busy for the past 2 days. The next day, he contacted Rong Haiyue. Rong Haiyue belonged to the military and couldn't directly intervene in the matter. It was a little troublesome to deal with. After using all sorts of connections, he finally contacted Rong Haiyue's nephew, who was also Su Qianxi's cousin, Rong Rui. This wasn't the first time Li Jinan had heard of Rong Rui. As the husband of Li Xiqing's super assistant and the incident with Tang Menjing, Rong Rui's name was well known. Although Rong Rui wasn't in the capital often, he was very practical and sociable. He also had many friends. Through his network of contacts, Li Jinan got in touch with a well-known lawyer in the capital who was known to have never lost a case. By the time he understood the situation and saw Yi Yu again, 2 days had passed. Everyone knows that Miss Yi and Miss Guan are inside. No one can prove that Miss Guan drank the poison and Miss Yi is innocent. The most troublesome thing is that Miss Yi helped her open the bottle. The most crucial point of this matter is on it. Miss Ye's fingerprints are clearly left on it. In addition to your previous grievances. The lawyer's words were very serious. Yi Yu sat across from them. She was very nervous. Especially after hearing the lawyer's words, his heart became even colder. More importantly, Guan Yanhong's status in the capital is not low. The higher-ups will likely give him some face. Recently, I've heard that he's dealing with this matter. He's even said that he's going to sentence you to death. Yi Yu trembled slightly and looked at Li Jinan helplessly. Li Jinan stood across from her. There was a layer of glass between them. He couldn't touch her at all. He could only reach out to look at her through the glass and whisper, "Don't be afraid. Mr. Lawyer isn't done yet." Chapter 1556. The breakthrough point was Guan Kui's mental illness. If a psychopath acted up, he would really do anything. Guan Kui's current situation was not optimistic. No one could guarantee that she was still thinking like a normal person. Therefore, the biggest breakthrough point was Guan Kui. "I just received the latest news. Guan Kui is still in the ICU. Her life is in danger. If she wakes up, she will be safe and sound. Everything will turn for the better. If she doesn't wake up, then there will be no evidence," Li Jinan said with a solemn expression. "Therefore, we can only pray that she wakes up soon. The Guan family's status is not low. Guan Yanhong frequently enters the political districts in the capital. Furthermore, the capital is their headquarters. There are many things that are difficult to manipulate in the dark here. Lawyer Ye's expression was solemn as he continued, Rong Rue has been a good friend of mine for many years. I will do my best. However, based on the current situation, Guan Yanhong is not weak at all. He has dominated the real estate industry for so many years and has accumulated quite a bit of power. His only weakness is probably his daughter. When he heard Lawyer Ye's words, Li Jinan suddenly laughed. Are you saying that the Li family is no match for the Guan family? A mighty dragon cannot suppress a local snake. Third young master, this is the capital. Li Jinan's expression did not look too good. What Lawyer Yi had said made sense. He took a deep breath and asked, what do we do now? We wait and see. CI and hospital in the capital. In the ICU, more than a dozen doctors and nurses rushed in. The sound of the heartbeat machine rang out, and a series of urgent alarms could be heard. The golden 48 hours that the doctor had mentioned had already passed. Just a few minutes ago, Guan Kui's heartbeat monitor had sounded the alarm. Everyone was on standby and ready to go. Guan Yanhong stood at the door. His eyes were bloodshot. He covered his mouth and paced back and forth. The heartbeat monitor inside gradually stopped. Guan Yanhong raised his head and looked inside. Tears quickly flowed from his eyes. He squatted down on the floor and wailed bitterly. A middle-aged man's wails attracted the attention of many people. Guan Yanhong did not seem to notice that he had lost his composure. His cries were loud and sorrowful. His secretary, Xiao Su, was at a loss as to how to console him. She stood to the side and looked at Guan Yanhong's tall and frail back. She was at a loss as to what to do and said, the doctor isn't out yet. Don't worry too early. The door of the operating theater opened. Inside, several doctors and nurses pushed out a bed. On it was a human figure who was covered. When Xiao Su saw this scene, he secretly clicked his tongue. His heart ached, and he almost cried again. The doctor took off his mask, his face full of regret and self-blame. He bowed deeply and said, I'm sorry, we tried our best. Guan Yanhong collapsed to the ground. His sobs shook the heavens as he helped Xiao Su to her feet. Xiao Su led Guan Yanhong forward. When they lifted the white cloth, they saw Guan Kui's ashen face. His daughter, who was originally full of happiness and was about to be married today, was poisoned to death just like that. Guan Yanhong's sobs intensified. Suddenly, he raised his head. His eyelids fluttered, and the strong body of a father fell backward without any warning. Chapter 1557. With the news of Guan Kui's death, everything seemed to be at an impasse. After a few days of silence, Guan Yanhong finally brought the matter up again and took Yi Yuyu to court. The evidence at the scene and witnesses were present. The most crucial piece of evidence was Yi Yuyu's fingerprints. Lawyer Yi also pointed out that the cup contained a very rare chemical poison. It was considered a chemical contraband and was very rare. It was very difficult for people who were not familiar with chemical medicine to come into contact with such a drug. Lawyer Yi raised a few points of suspicion. 1. Yi Yuyu didn't have the time to buy such things. Even if she did, she wouldn't have been able to. 2. Yi Yuyu was currently living in Kingstown with Li Jinan. Her life was very comfortable and she enjoyed a good life. Why would she kill a stepsister with whom she had a grudge? There was no motive for the crime. 3. Yi Yuyu was called into the room by Guan Kui. Furthermore, Guan Kui was mentally ill. It was highly possible that Guan Kui had orchestrated and acted out all by herself in order to frame Yi Yuyu. 4. On the day of Guan Kui's wedding, the groom didn't show up. Furthermore, the groom was a widely recognized genius in medicine. He had come into direct contact with the drug. In other words, Shen Luo and was the biggest suspect. In court, after hearing lawyer Ye's words, the judges discussed it briefly. Finally, the judge announced that the suspicions were established. Let's invite the plaintiff to speak. With that, Yi Yuyu breathed a sigh of relief. Did that mean that they had the upper hand? The lawyer that Guan Yanhong had hired was very eloquent. With a few words, he brought the focus back to Yi Yuyu. He insisted that Yi Yuyu was the one who had framed Guan Kui. That wasn't the only incident. At the same time, the plaintiff's lawyer brought up the incident from many years ago and insisted that Yi Yuyu was jealous and unresigned. She had always wanted to get rid of Guan Kui because of how outstanding Guan Kui was. That incident had destroyed Guan Kui's legs, but it hadn't killed her. Yi Yuyu was indignant and had been waiting for an opportunity to strike a second time. That was why the incident at the wedding had occurred. After that, the case, which was not simple in the first place, became even more difficult. At the last moment, Yi Yuyu brought up a crucial point of the case. Guan Kui's legs can walk. Guan Yanhong shouted from the audience, **T. There was an uproar at the scene, and soon, the judge announced the adjournment of the court. They still had to examine Guan Kui's body. Things were getting complicated. However, the other suspect mentioned by lawyer Yi never appeared. It was as if Shen Luo and had vanished from the face of the earth. There was no movement at all. August 8th, heavy rain. It had been summer recently, and there was more and more rain. It was getting more and more inconvenient to travel. He seemed to have caught a cold. Recently, he had a slight cold. However, the baby was still healthy and everything was fine. The class went well, and everything was fine. It was just a little lonely. Even though I came into contact with a lot of people every day, and the neighbors who came and went took good care of me, I couldn't integrate into their world. I don't fit in with them. I want to go. The next stop was Li Town, Province G. It was raining cats and dogs. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Shen Luo and stood by the window of the guest house and looked out at the dark clouds covering the sky and the pedestrians running. He found it a little funny. Chapter 1558. On the third day of his escape, he hadn't contacted anyone. He hadn't given his family or anyone an explanation. His phone hadn't been switched on. Even Shen Luo and despised his evasion. He put down the wine glass. The empty bottles were piled up in the corner under the bed. The pungent smell of alcohol was pungent. Shen Luo and took out his phone that had been switched off and turned it on. In less than a minute, all sorts of messages bombarded his phone. Shen Luo and had expected it. He picked up his phone and glanced at it. He saw a piece of heavy news. Dad, Kui is dead. Where are you? Shenjilia's mother, Luo, and something happened to Kui. Why aren't you back yet? How much longer are you going to hide outside? Uncle Guan, if you come back, I'll break your legs. There were all sorts of messages and WeChat messages. Shen Luo and clicked on them one by one. The more he read, the colder his heart became. Shen Luo and had originally thought that they were just joking, but it was replaced by an indescribable seriousness. Guan Kui is dead. Shen Luo and turned on his phone and called Shenjilia. Shenjilia seemed to be busy. It took him a while to answer the call. The moment he picked up, he heard Shenjilia's bombarding voice. You're finally willing to turn your phone on. Where have you been the past few days? Do you know what happened recently? Shen Luo An's expression was solemn. He felt a faint sense of relief as he asked, what happened to Kui? Was it a collective joke? Or perhaps it was just a ploy to trick him back. After all, it was such an important day. Him leaving just like that would have a significant impact on the girl. Shen Luohan's wishful thinking was quickly shattered. Shenjilia's tone was solemn as he said, Guan Kui is dead. Shen Luohan's heart sank to its lowest point. Yi Yu poisoned her. After she drank it, she was sent to the emergency room, but she didn't make it. She died in the hospital. Shenjilia took a deep breath and said, Brother, if you wanted to marry her, why did you agree to marry her? Guan Kui was still so young. How could you bear to lose such a precious life because of you? Shenjilia continued, You've let Yi Yu down. You've let Sister Manting down. Now, even Guan Kui has died because of you. Doesn't your conscience feel uneasy? Shenjilia was speechless. Jilia. You must be joking, right? How could Yi possibly die? Shen Luohan asked, feeling very down. Furthermore, it was Yi Yu. Although Yi Yu has a history with Guan Kui, she would never do something like that. Jilia, it can't be Yi Yu. She's not that kind of person. Shen Luohan said with certainty, there must be some misunderstanding, or something went wrong somewhere. Chapter 1559. Such a simple description made Shen Luohan's heart ache. Guan Kui is dead. She was killed by Yi Yu. What a joke. Yi Yu couldn't have done such a thing. She wouldn't have been able to resist even if she had been killed, let alone kill someone. That kind of woman was as weak as a little lamb. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been treated this way by him all these years. Ever since Guan Kui's death, everything had changed. Shen Luohan was silent for a moment before saying, I'll go back immediately. Tell me what happened in a nutshell. He laughed coldly and replied, What were you doing earlier? Guan Kui is already dead. Guan Yanhong has already made it known that as long as he sees you, he'll kill you. He doesn't even give face to Dad. Your return now bodes ill rather than well. Yi Qianqian looked at Shenjilia coldly. When Shen Luohan heard that, he hung up the phone. He went to the bathroom and cleaned himself up. Soon after, he left the house and hailed a taxi to the airport. Even if Shen Luohan didn't know the whole story now, someone would tell him when he reached the capital. There was a new member in Yuxiu Villa. Li Jianyue and her two brothers were circling around it. It was a small puppy. Its fur was yellow, and its eyes were dark and bright. It was running around the little ones with its tongue out. Li Jianyue held a ball in her hand and shouted at the golden retriever, Little Sue, come here. Little Sue had just arrived at the house that day and was unfamiliar with the name. When it saw Li Jianyue waving at it, it immediately wagged its tail and ran over. It circled around the little one's feet and cried out in a childish voice, Woof. Ursu, don't get too close. Be careful not to get bitten. You'll have to get an injection. Su Qianxi's stomach was already slightly bulging. She looked at her daughter helplessly and said, Mosin, look after your sister. Li Mosin immediately came over and pulled Li Jianyue's hand over. He said, Ursu, don't let mommy worry. The puppy's not clean. Granny Rong is going to give it a bath. When Li Jianyue heard that she was going to bathe the puppy, her eyes lit up and she exclaimed, Really? You're going to bathe the puppy? That's great. Not now. In a few days, if the puppy can't adapt to the environment, it will not be acclimatized. When the puppy vomits, it will be too pitiful. Li Jianqian came forward. Li Jianyue didn't quite understand and said, Mom, if you're going to Grandpa's house, can you bring us along? I don't want little Sue anymore. Anyway, little Sue isn't fun. No, you have to stay at home. Great-grandpa hasn't been feeling well recently, so you can't go back to the old mansion. You have to be good and listen to Granny Rong, do you hear me? Li Jianyue was a little unhappy. She pouted and asked, then why can brother go? The little boy looked at Li Jianxian unhappily and said, Mommy is biased, and so is Daddy. Why is older brother going and not us? Be good at home with brother Mosen. Brother is going to stay at Grandpa's house. There are no children at Grandpa's house and no one to accompany him. It's very pitiful. Su Qianxi touched Li Jianyue's head. I'll bring you delicious food when I come back. Chapter 1560. Listen to Mommy. Li Xiqing's voice was unquestionable. He walked over and said, the dog can't replace its older brother, but it can play with you. Su Qianxi straightened her back. Her back was a little sore. Let's go. Okay. Li Xiqing came forward and held Su Qianxi's arm. Are you still not feeling well? It's all right. It's much better than before. Su Qianxi held her waist and said, why didn't I have such a strong reaction when I was pregnant with them? This little guy must be very naughty. Li Xiqing smiled when he heard that and said, it's good to be naughty. It's best if it's a girl. That way, our family will have 2 little princesses. Ah, but I like a little brother. Li Jianyue immediately interrupted. She looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of big black eyes and said, Daddy, I don't like a little sister. We don't know if it's a little brother or a little sister, but this is not a reason for you to run out. Go back. Li Xiqing's voice had a hint of a smile. The little girl was not afraid at all. She giggled and hugged Li Xiqing's thigh. Daddy, take me with you. I want to see Grandpa too. I want to see Grandpa Rong and Grandma Rong and Grandpa Song. I haven't seen Grandpa Song for a long time. The little girl pouted and said, Daddy, take me with you. No. Li Xiqing tapped her little nose and said, Nanny Rong, quickly take Ursu back. Mosen, take little sister back. Su Qianxi and Li Jianxian stood behind. Daisu's eyes were full of reluctance as he looked at them. His snow-white and tender face was a little sad, and his eyes were a little red. Li Mosen came forward and held Li Jianyue's hand. He looked at Li Xiqing and said, Daddy, will Daisu live at Grandpa's house in the future? He's also going to school there. Won't he come back? Li Xiqing looked at Li Mosen with a pair of dark eyes and nodded. Yes. Li Mosen's little face was full of sadness. He looked at Li Xiqing and asked, why? Because there are no children in Grandpa's family. Grandpa hopes that a child can live with them. Grandpa and Grandma are old and need a sensible child to accompany them. Li Xiqing's explanation was reasonable. It was the truth, but it was hard to accept it when he said it out loud. How could Su Qianxi bear to part with him? When she saw his expression, all the reluctance in her heart was drawn out again. She squatted down and whispered, he'll be back. Bring him back when the holidays are over. She looked at him innocently and said, older brother is going to school. He'll be back after school. I'll wait for older brother to finish school. Let's play together at night. Li Jianxian stood alone in the back. When he heard Li Jianyue's words, there was an indescribable sadness in his heart. He immediately turned around and opened the car door with red eyes. Then, he sat in the car himself. Turning his head, Li Xiqing saw his silent movements and knew that he was not feeling well. However, this was the case in the early stages. Perhaps it would be better once he got used to it. Let's go. There's no time. Li Xiqing helped Su Qianxi up and said softly, the children are not used to it now. They'll be fine when they get used to it. Su Qianxi nodded and quickly got into the car with Li Xiqing. Chapter 1561. Don't cry. Li Xiqing sat in the front passenger seat. His voice was a little serious. You are a boy. What did I teach you? Li Jianqian stopped crying and turned his head to look out the window. Be strong. What is the purpose of us going to Grandpa's house this time? To accompany Grandpa. Li Jianqian lowered his head. His voice was a little timid, but he quickly said, but I don't want to go. Objection overruled. Li Xiqing looked out the window and said, we will accompany you. After you are familiar with the environment, we will leave. Su Qianxi hugged her son and said, don't be afraid. There are many fun things at Grandpa's house. Grandpa has already prepared a room for you at home. All the toys you want are there. There are also many children in the courtyard. You will be very happy. Not happy, not happy, Li Jianqian didn't speak. He looked out the window and bit his lip as tears slipped down. His 5-year-old, someone else's 5-year-old, when they arrived at the capital, it was already evening. After sending Li Jianqian to the Rong residence, Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian were very happy. They came forward with smiles on their faces and welcomed their little grandson in. When Li Jianqian saw Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian, he nodded politely and said, hello, Grandpa. Hello, Grandma. Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue both smiled and said, hello, Daisu. Come in. Grandpa and Grandma have prepared a room for you. Your grandmother personally decorated it for you. Come in and take a look. Li Jianqian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He followed the old couple in. Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing had mainly sent the child to accompany the old couple. At the same time, they wanted to see how Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan were doing. He directly left the child here, and after informing them, he turned around and left. Li Jianqian looked at them, and the uneasiness in his heart grew. Looking at their backs, he called out, Dad, Mom. The smiles on Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian's faces froze. Seeing Li Jianqian pretending to be strong despite being a little scared, they felt a little sorry for him. Compared to other 5-year-old children, Li Jianqian was much stronger. When Su Qianxi heard Li Jianqian's voice, she couldn't bear to see it happen. Her initial worry for Yi Yuyu dissipated. She glanced at Li Xiqing and said, Hubby, go ahead. I'll stay here with the child. You can tell me what's going on when you come back. Yes. Li Xiqing nodded his head and turned around to rub Li Jianqian's head gently. Be a good boy. If you need anything, you can look for Grandpa and Grandma. They'll do everything for you. Dad. Li Jianqian looked at him with a pair of eyes that were identical to his own and asked, will you still bring me back to Kingstown? Li Xiqing pursed his lips. There was not much of a smile on his face. The hand that was rubbing his head paused slightly. Then, he pinched his cheek and said, are you afraid that Dad doesn't want you anymore? Li Jianqian curled his lips, lowered his head, and did not speak. Seeing this, Li Xiqing knew that he must have guessed correctly. He said, you're young, but you think a lot. Feeling helpless, he said, every one of my children will be an elite in the future. I will not lose any of them. Chapter 1562. More importantly, Mosen wasn't their biological son. Why did they send him to the capital and not Mosen? Could it be that they wanted to raise Mosen as their own child, so they didn't want him anymore? Su Qianxi was stunned when she heard that. She had never imagined that Mosen, at such a young age, would have such thoughts in his mind. Li Xiqing hadn't expected that either. When he heard that, he found it funny and his mood became serious. Li Xiqing squatted down and looked at Li Jianqian with a serious expression. Do you know why I chose to send you here? Li Jianqian shook his head, looking aggrieved. Because you are my son and your mother's son. Grandpa has no children, and your mother is his only daughter. They are getting old and need someone to accompany them. Li Xiqing looked at his son and explained, which was rare. Ursu is a girl. She cries easily, is delicate, and is a little stupid. You know that, don't you? Li Jianqian nodded with tears in his eyes, but the tears in his eyes gradually disappeared. Do you know why I didn't send Mosen here? In fact, Li Xiqing was rarely patient with children. He rarely had such patience, except when he was explaining the exercises to them. Now, he was staring at him and said word by word, because he is not our biological child. You also know that Mosen was adopted by us later on. He is our family, but he has nothing to do with Grandpa and Grandma. Do you know that? The tears in Li Jianqian's eyes had completely disappeared. He looked at Li Xiqing and nodded his head vigorously. Li Xiqing was a little relieved. He reached out and patted his head. Because you are our child, biological, so I sent you here. Firstly, you can accompany Grandpa and Grandma. Secondly, you can train. Do you still remember the sentence that Grandpa hung at the back of the study? What does it say? Li Jianqian thought for a moment before saying, the Li family doesn't raise useless people. It's good that you know. The Li family doesn't raise useless people. Only steel that has been tempered can become hard. You may be young now, but this is not a reason for you to be weak. I need you to become stronger. Li Xiqing looked at him with a serious expression and said, Great-grandfather is old, and Grandpa and Grandma are not young now. If one day I'm gone, you have to take care of the whole family, your mother, and your sister. Do you hear me? Li Jianqian looked at Li Xiqing. His eyes were clear, and his face, which was very similar to Li Xiqing's, was moved. Even Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue were very surprised by his way of education. Was it really appropriate to feed such chicken soup to such a young child? What surprised them even more was that Li Jianqian didn't look like he didn't understand at all. Instead, he nodded his head very seriously and said, yes. Recently, something happened to little uncle's girlfriend in the capital. Apart from bringing you here, your mother and I are also going to check on your little uncle's situation. Your little uncle's girlfriend might end up in jail. Any more serious, and he would be sentenced to death. Li Jianqian's eyes widened and he said, the police wrongly accused a good person. Little Aunt wouldn't do anything bad. We don't know yet. Daddy and Mommy are going to take a look. You stay at Grandpa's house and wait for us to come back. Chapter 1563. At the Li family's old mansion. Li Jianyue chased little Sue all over the house. The puppy had just arrived in a new environment and seemed to be very uncomfortable. When it saw Li Jianyue, it immediately ran away. As it ran, the little guy gradually lost interest because it couldn't catch up with the guy. Disinterestedly, it sat on the sofa and began to pick up the remote control to watch a cartoon. Li Mosen was reading a book at the side and saw all of Li Jianyue's movements. When he saw that she had sat down, he finally heaved a sigh of relief and said, Are you tired from running? Unexpectedly, Li Jianyue threw the remote control directly and said unhappily, Brother Mosen, why isn't my brother back yet? Brother Mosen, my brother. These two forms of address both sounded like brother. Perhaps Ursu was still young, so she didn't realize the difference between these words. But in Li Mosen's heart, it was not very comfortable. He looked at Li Jianyue and said, Desu went to the capital and won't be back for a while. But didn't he say he was going to the capital to study? It's already night now. Why isn't he back yet? Li Jianyue was very unhappy. She looked at Li Mosen and said, Why is Brother Mosen 1 year older than me and doesn't have to go to school in the capital? Because he went to live at Grandpa and Grandma's house. If he wants to go to school there, he can only come home during the holidays. Then, he hasn't had the holidays yet. Not yet. How long will it take? Maybe a few more days. How many days? More than 10 days. That's more than 10 days. Li Jianhua leaned closer and looked at Li Mosen. Her mouth was pouting. I won't be able to see my brother for more than 10 days. Li Mosen's words stopped in his mouth. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. When Li Jianhua saw that he didn't speak, she knew that he admitted it. She opened her mouth and burst into tears. The crying was especially loud in the living room of the old mansion. When Qin Shuhua heard the little girl crying, she immediately ran out. When she saw the little girl sitting on the sofa and crying, her heart ached. She came forward and carried the little princess over. Grandma, why are you crying? Don't cry, don't cry. Li Jianhua hugged Qin Shuhua's hand and cried at her grandmother. Grandma, why isn't brother back yet? I miss him. I don't want him to go to school in the capital. I want him home. How could Qin Shuhua bear it? But she couldn't convince Li Xiqing and his wife. She thought. She thought for a moment and said, Jianhua, why didn't he come back? It was only then that Li Jianhua's crying subsided a little. She got off Qin Shuhua's body and ran to the phone. She took the phone and turned to look at Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua took it and dialed the number. Soon, she called the Rong family in the capital. The family picked up and Jianhua's number. Rong Xian looked very happy and said, In-law, hello. QS Qian B. Qian, yes, we just had dinner. Qian and Xiqing are busy, leaving me and the baby at home. Do you want the baby to answer the phone? They're still busy in the capital? How could they leave their children at home? These two people. Hey, didn't Qian's brother-in-law's girlfriend run into some trouble? See, he's rushing to deal with it. Something happened to Qian's brother-in-law's girlfriend. The more Qin Shuhua thought about it, the more she felt that something was off. She made a call to Li Jinan, but he seemed to be very busy. It took a few more calls before he finally picked up. Hello. Li Jinan's voice was filled with exhaustion. Chapter 1565. Li Jinan's heart skipped a beat. He straightened up and asked, How did you know? Qin Shuhua's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She asked anxiously, What happened? How did she end up in jail all of a sudden? What's going on? Li Jinan rubbed his temples. His head was throbbing with pain. He frowned and said, It's a long story. How did you know? Didn't Daisu get sent to the capital by Qian and your second brother today? I just called him and heard from Qian's mother. Qin Shuhua had a feeling that things were not as simple as they seemed. Why would she be framed and sent to prison all of a sudden? This girl looks gentle and quiet. Could she be the kind of person who is difficult to deal with in private? For example, she might be involved in the underworld or engage in shady dealings in private. That was scary to think about. Mom, don't overthink things. It's not a big deal. It's just a little tricky. Don't worry. Qin Shuhua wasn't worried about anything. She just felt a little uneasy. Li Jinan had never been the kind of person to tell his wife things. Usually, there was something wrong with the way he covered things up. Qin Shuhua knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of Li Jinan. She nodded her head and said, It's good that you know what you're doing. You can help this girl, but you have to do it within your means. I heard that she committed a crime in the capital. The capital is different from Kingstown. You have to be careful. Li Jinan held the phone in his hand. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was familiar and eye-catching. Just looking at the person made the negative emotions that Li Jinan had been suppressing for a long time resurface. He said into the phone, "Yeah, got it, Mom. I'm hanging up." After hanging up, Li Jinan held the phone in his hand. He looked at Shenluo and slowly walked forward. Shenluo didn't look in a good state of mind. The dark circles under his eyes were obvious. He looked haggard. Shenluo walked closer and closer to Li Jinan. As the distance between the two of them closed, the anger in Li Jinan's stomach grew. Looking at Shenluo Li Jinan strode forward. Without another word, he aimed his cell phone at Shenluo's face and threw a vicious punch. Shenluo was caught off guard. He stumbled and fell backward when he was hit in the face. Without waiting for Shenluo to regain his balance, Li Jinan followed up with another heavy punch. He did not hold back at all. Shenluo groaned and tried to resist with his hand, but how could a weak scholar like Shenluo resist Li Jinan's strength? That tiny struggle was no threat to Li Jinan. After Shenluo suffered a few punches, the people around him finally noticed the commotion. The sound of footsteps came from all around. Li Jinan looked up and reached out to grab him by the collar. He yanked him up and pressed him against the wall. He roared, "You still have the face to show up, you beast." Shenluo was beaten so badly that he almost fainted. Hearing those words, he sneered coldly and wiped the corner of his mouth. Chapter 1566. When he heard that, Li Jinan paused in his actions. He glared at Shenluo like a lion on the edge of a rage that could swallow him up at any moment. Shenluo chuckled at his rage. He asked, "Do you hate me that much?" "Tch." Li Jinan laughed coldly. His expression was devoid of warmth as he said, "You don't have the right." Shenluo wasn't angry. He reached out to remove Li Jinan's hand and asked, "If that's the case, what's the meaning of this?" Such a repulsive stance didn't intimidate Li Jinan in the slightest. He remained motionless. A pair of deep, dark eyes stared at him. He narrowed them and asked, "What did you mean by turning yourself in earlier?" Shenluo pulled his hand down even more forcefully and replied, "Don't you understand? Turning myself in." Li Jinan's gaze was sharp as he stared at him. "You killed Guan Kui, didn't you?" "No." Shenluo put his hand down. He looked down at Li Jinan's hand and said, "Can't you speak properly? You're making me very afraid." Li Jinan released his hand. Shenluo straightened his clothes and said, "Guan Kui's death has nothing to do with me. But, I know that Yi Yuyu couldn't have killed her." "Of course I know that. Given Yi Yuyu's temperament, it would be fine as long as she wasn't killed by others. Why would she harm others? What a joke." "So, there's a high possibility that it was all an act. Guan Kui didn't die at all." Shenluo's expression was calm, but the words that came out of his mouth were unsettling. When Li Jinan heard that, his sharp eyes flashed. He asked, "What do you mean?" Shenluo wasn't prepared to explain. He looked inside and asked, "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Li Jinan was currently residing in one of Li Xiqing's properties in the capital. He was only temporarily staying there. When he heard that, Li Jinan wasn't stingy. He turned to the side and allowed Shenluo to walk in. They sat facing each other. Li Jinan's expression was wary. The corners of Shenluo's lips curled up slightly, but there was a hint of bitterness in it. He asked, "How has Yuyu been lately? Now that I'm in prison, do you think it'll be better?" The Guan family has no intention of letting her off the hook. Recently, they've been pinning all sorts of crimes on her. Guan Yanhong has already made up his mind to sentence her to death. This is all thanks to you. Li Jinan scoffed. It's my fault. I've let them down. Whether it's Yu or Kay, it's all because of me that they turned against each other. Shen Luo and looked at Li Jinan and enunciated each word clearly. Guan Yanhong hates Yu. 7 years ago, she pushed Kay off the cliff. It wasn't Yu, Li Jinan said with certainty. Yu wouldn't do something like that. Shen Luo and was momentarily at a loss for words. After a long pause, he continued, in any case, it was because of that incident 7 years ago that Yu is in this situation today. I'm guessing that Guan Kui isn't dead. This was Guan Yanhong's plan to get rid of Yu. Using his daughter's death as a joke. Li Jinan found it ridiculous. Given Guan Yanhong's temperament, it's highly likely that he would do something like that, Shen Luo and said. This isn't the first time he's done something like that. About 20 years ago, he faked his death once. Chapter 1567. Shen Luo An's words made Li Jinan frown. What do you mean? Back then, he and Guan Kui's mother were difficult to get along with. During an argument, he drove off in a fit of anger. In the end, he got into a car accident, and his car exploded. Just when everyone thought he was dead, Guan Kui's mother committed suicide. In the end, on the night of her mother's death, he returned. When Li Jinan heard the story, he found it incredulous. When Shen Luo saw his expression, he slowly continued, after he returned, although he looked very sad, it didn't take long for him to start having girlfriends. Later, he hooked up with a married woman. After that woman got a divorce, the two of them got married. That woman was Yi Yu's mother, Yi Tian. Li Jinan had heard a little about Yi Tian's family. He nodded his head and wasn't surprised. He didn't give any response to the incident back then, but many people were wondering if it was a self-directed act to force his wife to her death. Shen Luo Han's voice was slow. He paused for a moment before continuing, but there's no evidence. Do you have water to drink? Li Jinan glared at him angrily at his sudden pause. He stood up and went to the kitchen to get a bottle of mineral water. He tossed it to him and asked, So, you suspect that Guan Kui isn't dead and that she's only trying to frame Yu? Yes. Then, what about the surrender you mentioned earlier? This entire incident happened because of me, Shen Luo said. Now that Yu and Guan Kui are in this state, I cannot be pardoned. Shen Luo looked at Li Jinan. I've let her down. I'll help you with this matter. As long as we can find evidence to prove that Guan Kui is still alive, there will be a turn for the better. But Guan Kui's funeral is in a few days, Li Jinan said. His body will be cremated this afternoon. All the evidence points to Yu, and you're saying this to me. Li Jinan found it laughable. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of helplessness. Guan Yanhong isn't someone to be trifled with. If you want to deal with him, you'll have to do it quickly. Otherwise, I have plenty of ways to make things difficult for you in the future. Shen Luo chuckled when he heard that. It won't be easy. If Yu is sentenced to death, I won't have an easy time even without you. Don't worry. As he spoke, he opened the bottle of water and took a sip before saying, I believe that Yu wouldn't do something like that. She doesn't have the guts, but Guan Kui does. Pfft. What do you believe? You didn't even believe what happened back then, and you believe this. Are you a spy sent by Guan Yanhong? What happened back then? I actually believed in Yu because I knew that it was impossible for Yu to do something like that. But back then, I was young and didn't have the ability to judge for myself. Everyone was blaming her. You know, when it comes to public opinion, it will become true when enough people talk about it. Excuses. Then how do you know about it now? Shen Luo and smiled bitterly. Recently, I talked to Guan Kui's psychiatrist and went through all of her medical records. Li Jinan was stunned. What? Chapter 1568. She wanted to kill Yi Yu. She wanted to be with me. Even after so many years of treatment, this obsession didn't change at all. However, when she found out that my relationship with Yi Yu wasn't harmonious, her mental state improved a lot. She requested to be transferred to my younger brother's hospital, all so that she could be with me. Shen Luo and looked at Li Jinan with a sinister expression. With a faint smile, he said, "Thanks to you, Yi Yu and I got divorced." When Li Jinan saw the expression on his face, he raised his eyebrows and leaned back in his chair. "Didn't you want a divorce for a long time? I merely helped you. Shouldn't you be grateful to me?" "That's right." Shen Luo and seemed to sigh and chuckled. His expression was bitter. He had wanted a divorce for a long time, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. To Yi Yu, a divorce was the greatest form of revenge she could take. In the past, Shen Luo and had never thought that divorce could be a form of relief for Yi Yu. Every decision he made and every word he said, he thought that it would be a great pain for Yi Yu. When Li Jinan manipulated Guan Kui in secret and encouraged her to divorce him, Shen Luo and realized that he had made a grave mistake. On the day of the divorce, he had tried to get Yi Yu to keep him. He had asked her, "Yi Yu, don't you like me very much? Don't you love me? How did you change so quickly?" If Yi Yu had hesitated at that time, perhaps his decision would have been different. But Yi Yu hadn't. Not only had she not, but she had avoided him like the plague. This made Shen Luo and feel extremely defeated. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of defeat for an unknown reason. It was as if such a separation was a form of relief for Yi Yu and not a form of pain and torment. This was different from what Shen Luo and had expected. The difference was huge. Li Jinan looked at him deeply and enunciated each word clearly. "No matter what your relationship was in the past, Yi Yu is now divorced from you. To you, she is nothing more than an ex-wife. You're wrong. To me, Yu is not only my ex-wife, but also my childhood sweetheart, my first love. I've let her down." "You're the one who let her down," Li Jinan said. "If it weren't for the lousy suitors you attracted, Yu wouldn't have ended up like this." His words weren't polite at all. "Scum like you should go to hell." "I will, but now is not the time for me to go to hell. I will help you clear Yi Yu's name. I'm ready." Shen Luo and looked at Li Jinan. Before Li Jinan could speak, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. Li Jinan looked at him. His gaze was deep as he said, "I hope you're right." "Really?" Then, she picked up the phone and saw the name on it, Lawyer Yi. "Mr. Li, something happened to Miss Yi. I need you to come over." Li Jinan's heart skipped a beat. He immediately became alert and asked, "What's going on?" "Miss Yi fainted today and was just sent to the hospital." According to the female police officer's reaction, Miss Yi might be pregnant. Chapter 1569. Pregnant. Those three words were like a bomb to Shen Luo's ears. Caught off guard, all of his defenses, all of his fortresses, were blown to smithereens. Pregnant. Yi Yu is pregnant. Li Jinan took a long time to react before bursting out in laughter. Pregnant. That means that Guan Yanhong wants to frame her. No matter how he tries to pull strings, it's impossible to sentence him to death. Lawyer Yi was silent when he heard that. Shouldn't most men's first reaction be, I'm pregnant. I'm going to be a father. Why is it different when it comes to Li Jinan? The first thing that comes to mind isn't the child, but the mother of the child doesn't have to die. Lawyer Yi paused for a moment before replying, from a legal perspective, that's true. Yeah. Li Jinan's heartbeat sped up. He was overwhelmed with excitement, but his rationality kept his emotions under control. You have to take good care of her. It doesn't matter how you pull strings. You have to keep an eye on her. I'm afraid Guan Yanhong won't let this go easily. Don't worry, Mr. Li, leave it to me. There won't be a problem. Lawyer Yi already had a comprehensive plan. I'll need your cooperation. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. The smile on Li Jinan's face faded. His eyes were as cold as ice. No matter what, she's my woman and my child. I won't let them stay in jail for long. My woman, my child. My woman, my child. When Shen Luo heard that, he felt a little dazed. Yi Yuyu's smile was like a flower in front of him. She had followed him relentlessly, calling him Brother Luo, and with a sweet smile. Time flew by. More than a decade had passed. They had fallen in love, been in love, and hated each other. From marriage to divorce, every step and every day was vivid in his mind. Even though they were divorced, Shen Luo still didn't feel that there was much distance between them. Now that he could personally feel Li Jinan's joy, he felt as if he had just woken up from a dream. She was different after all. The little girl who had followed him all those years ago and called him Brother Luo was no longer the same. She had become someone else's woman. It was he, Shen Luo, who had pushed her away. At this point, Shen Luo's heart was filled with mixed feelings. The joys, sorrows, bitterness, and spiciness all fused together in his chest in an uncontrollable manner. Li Jinan hung up the phone and turned around to see Shen Luo's expression. She narrowed her eyes slightly, but before she could say anything, she heard Shen Luo say with a bitter laugh, "Congratulations." The joy that Li Jinan had suppressed once again surged out of control. The corners of his lips curled up in a proud smile. He nodded his head slightly and said, "Thank you." Shen Luo stood up and said, "I'm leaving now. Call me if there's any progress." Li Jinan didn't say anything. He stood up and walked him out the door. As for Shen Luo, he glanced at him and chuckled. "Yu is a good girl. I hope you'll treat her well. Don't worry. I'm not a scumbag." Li Jinan smiled. "Have a safe trip." Shen Luo chuckled and looked ahead. A gust of wind blew gently, lifting up his hair and entering his eyes. Chapter 1570. With that, Shen Luo walked away with light steps. His back was facing Li Jinan. His figure was lean and straight. Li Jinan watched his back and slowly said, "Thank you." His voice was very soft. When Shen Luo heard that, he paused. He didn't look back. Instead, he looked straight ahead and walked at a steady pace. What? She's pregnant. A furious voice came from Guan Yanhong's office. Is it really such a coincidence that she's pregnant at this time? The assistant pushed up his glasses and replied matter-of-factly, "According to reliable sources, it's probably true." Guan Yanhong was enraged. That be *tch. Is her luck really that good? The assistant didn't say anything else. He looked at Guan Yanhong and silently handed over the documents in his hands. Mrs. Medical records have been leaked. Guan Yanhong was shocked and turned to look at him. How much? A little. Not much. However, what was leaked was more private. The assistant flipped open the documents. The incident that happened years ago has been completely exposed. The defendant has already collected this evidence. The old accounts from 7 or 8 years ago have been dug up. Guan Yanhong stepped forward and snatched the documents from the assistant's hands. He quickly scanned through them. All the medical treatments that Guan Kuei had received over the years, as well as all the voice recordings, had been exposed as evidence for the defendant. Guan Yanhong looked through them and was shocked. He roared in anger, how could these things be exposed? Everything has been fine for so many years. How could they be exposed now? The incident of Guan Kuei falling off the cliff years ago had infuriated Guan Yanhong. Especially when Guan Kuei had revealed that the incident had something to do with Yi Yuyu, Guan Yanhong had given Yi Tian the cold shoulder. In the first few days, Yi Tian had still protected Yi Yuyu. Later on, when she realized that he was really angry, she had started to help him and had given Yi Yuyu the cold shoulder. Guan Yanhong hadn't done anything to Yi Yuyu, but Yi Tian had taken the initiative to tell him everything he had wanted to do and say. In the end, Yi Yuyu couldn't take it anymore and moved out. It was only when Guan Kuei woke up that Guan Yanhong found out the whole story. Although that incident had nothing to do with Yi Yuyu, at the bottom of it all, it had something to do with her. If it hadn't been for Yi Yuyu's appearance, Shen Luo would never have taken a liking to Yi Yuyu and would never have given Guan Kuei the cold shoulder. In the end, Guan Yanhong transferred all his resentment to Yi Yuyu. When he found out that Yi Yuyu's life had been miserable for so many years, Guan Yanhong felt a pang of pleasure. That was the kind of retribution a SL*T deserved. However, Guan Kuei's mental state soon deteriorated. She found it difficult to stand. That was a huge blow to Guan Kuei. When Guan Yanhong found out that Yi Yuyu had gotten her wish of marrying Shen Luo, he immediately summoned Shen Luo to Guan Kuei. When Shen Luo saw the crazed look on Guan Kuei's face, his heart was filled with guilt and disgust. When he found out that Yi Yuyu had been hospitalized due to her fall, Guan Yanhong knew that he was halfway to success. He told Guan Kuei about the incident. Unexpectedly, Guan Kuei's mental state miraculously improved. As a result, Guan Yanhong began to arrange for Guan Kuei to be admitted to another hospital. Never in a million years would he have imagined that such a thing would happen to Guan Kuei at her wedding. Chapter 1571. If it hadn't been for Yi Yuyu, his daughter would still be alive. She would still be by his side. No. I don't care what you do. I'm going to kill Yi Yuyu. Isn't she pregnant? I'm going to make that B***** have an abortion. Guan Yanhong clenched his teeth as he gripped the document in his hand. Soon, the paper was wrinkled. He stared at his assistant and enunciated each word clearly. I'm going to make her pay. The assistant nodded his head and pushed up his glasses. With an indifferent expression, he said, I'll make the arrangements. When Guan Yanhong heard his assistant's words, he laughed mirthlessly. He stared at the document in his hand and said, so what if you know? The evidence is clear. Yi Yuyu can't escape. Yi Yuyu sat in the empty cell. Her hand gently stroked her abdomen. She felt incredulous. She was pregnant. Her flat abdomen contained a tiny life. That tiny life was Li Jinnan's. She had imagined many scenarios of her pregnancy. Perhaps she had found out about her little secret through a pregnancy test in a joyful and unexpected room. Or in the hospital, she was filled with disbelief and anticipation, waiting for another person to announce that she was pregnant. She had never imagined that it would be at such an awkward time. She had been in prison for a few days. Her mental state had deteriorated, and she had fainted. When she woke up, she had been told that she was pregnant. Yu would never forget that magical moment for the rest of her life. The rhythmic sound of footsteps came from outside. It was the prison warden. Yu knew it. When she looked up, the prison door had been opened. The female warden looked at her. Her complexion was much better than it had been a few days ago, but her tone was still emotionless as she said, "Your man is here to see you. Come on out." Perhaps it was because she knew that she was a mother, but Yu was no longer as afraid of death as she had been a few days ago. Her heart was as calm as still water. Yu stood up and followed the warden out. When she heard that familiar and magical term of address, she felt a sense of wonder. When she walked out, she saw Li Jinan sitting outside the glass partition. When Li Jinan saw Yu, he placed his hand on the glass and looked at her face. His gaze slowly moved down to her hand, which was resting on her abdomen. Yu could clearly see a joyful smile on Li Jinan's face. She walked over and sat down. Feeling a little aggrieved, she said, "You're here." Li Jinan nodded. "I'm here. I brought you something to eat. I'll get the guards to pass it to you. Remember to eat some later." "Yeah." Yu lowered her head and whispered, "Do you know?" What do you know?" "About my pregnancy." "Yeah, I just found out." Li Jinan's eyes crinkled as he said, "The timing is right. So, are the things you bought for me supplements for pregnant women?" "Yes." "So, you're taking care of your child, not me." Yu felt even more aggrieved. She looked at him and reached out her hand to meet his through the glass. "Tell me, if I can't get out of here for the rest of my life, should I give birth to the child in prison?" Chapter 1572. Dignified. Yu repeated the words. "What do you mean by dignified?" "We're pregnant before marriage, and given my current situation, I'll get you out," Li Jinan said. "When the time comes, we'll get married. When you're out, I'll start making arrangements. I won't let you give birth to a child without a title. My wife and my child must receive everyone's blessings. Yu, I'll marry you." He gazed at Yu with a serious expression. Yu's heart raced. She was surrounded by darkness. In the dry and emotionless prison cell, it was as if it was suddenly filled with radiance. It was all because of the man in front of her. Yu's heart raced. She looked at him and asked, "Are you sure you can do it?" "Yes." Li Jinan's voice was calm as he looked at her hand. His eyes were filled with regret and loneliness. "I really want to hug you and touch our child. Even if it's just your hand, I'd be happy." Yu felt the same way. This layer of glass separated them from each other. They were so close, but they couldn't touch each other. This feeling of distance was unbearable. Yu looked at Li Jinan and pursed her lips. She asked, "What about your mother after I get out? You even have her grandchild." "She won't reject it," Li Jinan said. "What if?" "There's no what if. Even if she doesn't accept it, my grandfather won't sit idly by." Li Jinan's eyes shone like stars as he slowly said, "I'll get you out. Don't be afraid. It won't be long." "I'm not afraid." Yu's face heated up. "I believe you, but I'm afraid that when I get out, the child will grow up. What if I can't fit into the wedding gown?" Yu's voice grew softer. As she spoke, she looked at him and asked in a small voice, "Am I thinking too much?" "No. That's a problem," Li Jinan said. His brows furrowed in thought. "In that case, I'll have to get you out as soon as possible. When the time comes, we'll deal with it quickly. What do you think? Marriage needs to be settled quickly." Yi Yu was a little taken aback. A wedding should be a little more exquisite. Not only did it have to be exquisite, it had to be romantic and sensational. Could it be that Li Jinan wants us to just get a marriage certificate and be done with it? Just like when she was with Shen Luofen? At that thought, she instinctively rubbed her belly and said, "I'm carrying your child in my belly. You can't just brush me off." Li Jinan couldn't help but laugh. "Why would I?" He reached out and placed his hand on hers. In a serious tone, he said, "When I said to end this quickly, I was referring to the matter regarding Guan Kui. Today, Shen Luofen came looking for me." Shen Luofen, these three words seemed to have been separated from him for several centuries. When Yi Yu heard that, she felt a little dazed. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Why was he looking for you?" "He told me that Guan Kui might not be dead yet." Yi Yu was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief. Li Jinan looked at her with a serious expression. "It's not impossible. You know what kind of person Guan Kui is. Do you think it's possible?" Chapter 1573. When Li Jinan heard that, his eyes darkened. "How did you know?" "I know Guan Yanhong very well. After all, we've lived together for more than a decade. I have some understanding of his temperament. Everyone knows that Guan Yanhong's daughter was poisoned in the hotel on the day of her wedding. After 2 days of resuscitation, she couldn't be saved and died." Li Jinan looked at Yi Yu and said, "This incident is extremely sensational." Yi Yu looked at Li Jinan and saw his frown deepen. She explained, "Guan Yanhong was a little superstitious. If Guan Kui was still alive, he would never have held a funeral for her. To Guan Yanhong, such a thing is extremely inauspicious. There is no way he is still alive." Li Jinan's frown deepened. When Yi Yu saw the expression on his face, she called out, "Li Jinan. Guan Kui is already dead. She wanted to frame me, and I couldn't escape. Now that I'm pregnant, it's impossible for Guan Yanhong to get anyone to sentence me to death. But if I lose my child, don't speak nonsense." Li Jinan retorted, but immediately, a white light flashed in his mind. Immediately, his sharp dark eyes pondered for a moment, and he muttered, "Maybe, we can think of a way." "You've thought of it? What is it? Please have a taste of your own medicine." The fact that Yi Yu had been transferred to prison caught Guan Yanhong by surprise. They were transferred to a women's prison. The women who were squatting there were either thieves or swindlers. The more serious ones might be lost girls who had lost their way or vicious murderers. When Yi Yu entered, many people looked at her as if she were a monkey. Especially when they saw Yi Yu's fair and clean appearance, some of the wilder and wilder women with buzz cuts whistled at her. Yi Yu was very well behaved the entire way. She kept her head down as she entered the prison. The Li family in Kingstown. Qin Shuhua had always felt uneasy. He paced back and forth on the sofa, his mind filled with thoughts about Li Jinan's girlfriend going to jail. Over the past few days, Qin Shuhua had sought out many of her friends to inquire about the matter. She had originally thought that since Li Jinan wasn't willing to tell her, she would have plenty of means to investigate the matter thoroughly. It was just that he didn't expect that not only was this matter cleared up, but he also dug out a heavy bomb. Yi Yu had been married before. Moreover, the man Yi Yu married was the brother of O Ming's fiancée. She was the wife of the brother who was messing around with his sister. Knowing this, Qin Shuhua could not eat or drink for the next few days. Her mind was filled with this matter. Li Xiao could tell what was on her mind. After asking a little, Qin Shuhua told him everything with a sad face. After hearing this, Li Xiao was silent for a while. Qin Shuhua panicked when she saw that. She immediately said, "Of course we can't let a woman like that be together. Jin Nan doesn't have much experience. A woman like that is very scheming. If he ends up being fooled by her, who is he going to complain to?" When Li Xiao heard that, he fell silent again. After a long while, he said, "Do you think it's more likely that she's lying to Jin Nan, or that Jin Nan is lying to her?" Chapter 1574. Good boy. Li Xiao smiled and shook his head at Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua was unhappy when she saw her husband's expression. She rebuked, "What's with that expression? Why don't you think of something? Not only is this woman married, but she's also in jail. If this gets out, what will others say about us? Jin Nan will have his own ideas on this matter. You don't have to worry about it." Li Xiao waved his hands and didn't seem to care. But Qin Shuhua wasn't happy about it. She said, "No way, old Li. Does this mean that you agree to them being together? It's not up to me to decide whether I agree or not. Didn't you say that the girl is in jail? Even if I agree, they have to release her first." When Qin Shuhua heard that, she couldn't figure out what Li Xiao meant. She looked at him and frowned. Li Xiao stood up from the sofa and ignored her. He turned sideways and walked away. Qin Shuhua still couldn't figure out what he meant. She quickly walked up and asked, "Old Li, what do you mean?" Li Xiao didn't answer. Qin Shuhua asked again, "Do you mean that the girl won't be released?" Li Xiao was speechless. "Say something." Li Xiao said, "I'm going to take a shower." "No, you have to make it clear to me." Qin Shuhua followed him but didn't catch him. Li Xiao quickly went into the bathroom. Qin Shuhua was blocked outside the door. She stomped her feet angrily and picked up her phone to call her obedient grandson in the capital. It was the third day of Li Jianqian's arrival in the capital. Everything in the capital was different from Kingstown. Not only had the environment changed, but the people around him were also very different from when he was in Kingstown. For the past 3 days, Li Jianqian had been playing the role of a good child. When Grandpa asked him to eat, he ate. When Grandma asked him to eat, he ate. Today, Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian both suggested taking him to the movies. Li Jianqian only said one word, "Okay." The neighbors all praised Li Jianqian for being obedient and sensible. But only Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue, as the parties involved, knew that for a child, such obedience was not a good thing. Once again sitting face to face with his wife, Rong Haiyue frowned and said, "Xian, is it not good for us to treat the child like this?" Rong Xian looked at Rong Haiyue and hesitated. They had always known that Li Jianqian was well-behaved and obedient. But these days, they found that the child did not seem to be happy. Rong Xian sighed and said, "Why don't we send the child back? After all, the child is still young. Don't let him get sick." "Daesu is sensible, but, Grandma, Grandpa," Li Jianqian said. The couple's backs stiffened, and they turned to look behind them. Li Jianqian walked over in thin cotton slippers and asked, "Don't you like me?" Hearing this, they knew that the child must have heard something, and they all looked a little embarrassed. At the same time, he felt guilty. Rong Haiyue reached out to Li Jianqian and said, "Daesu, come here." Li Jianqian followed the instructions and walked over, as obedient as a puppet. His expression was wooden and there was not much fluctuation. It was just that compared to his father, he was less cold and more tender. When he was about to say something, the phone at home rang. He picked up the phone. It was the Leaf family of Kingstown. Jianqian, it's Grandma. Come and answer the phone. Rong Haiyue waved his hand, and soon Li Jianqian walked over, picked up the phone, and called out, Grandma. Hearing her obedient grandson's voice, Qin Shuhua's reluctance to part with him was aroused again. Daisu, how are you doing in the capital? Chapter 1576. Qin Shuhua was even more reluctant to part with her grandson when she heard how sensible he was. Holding the phone, her eyes felt a little warm as she said, Then you have to study hard. Grandma is waiting for you. Li Jianqian was very sensible. But it was also because of this that Qin Shuhua felt a little distant from this child. This child was not like a child at all. After exchanging a few more pleasantries with the child, Qin Shuhua hung up the phone. Li Jianyue and Li Mosin had both returned to Yuxiu. After Qin Shuhua hung up the phone, she felt bored. She loosened her muscles and walked around. When she walked into the backyard, Captain Li was in the gazebo. Looking from afar, the figure that was originally as straight as a javelin had unknowingly become a little stooped. His thick hair had all turned white, and his face was covered with layers of wrinkles. As he got older, his originally majestic back view was covered with the vicissitudes of time. As if sensing Qin Shuhua's arrival, Li Sun looked up. A pair of old eyes were covered with a layer of white haze. They were turbid yet filled with wisdom that was hard to comprehend. Seeing Qin Shuhua, Li Sun chuckled and waved at her. Come here. Decades had passed, but when Qin Shuhua saw Li Sun, she always felt an indescribable sense of nervousness. This feeling had existed since she married Li Xiao until now. At that moment, when she saw Li Sun waving at her, Qin Shuhua unconsciously straightened her back and walked toward the gazebo. The stone table in the gazebo was covered with high-quality rice paper. On the table, there was paper, brush, ink, and ink. Captain Li's withered hand held a brush as the paper danced in the air. But it was obvious that the strength of the writing was far from what it used to be. Dad. I remember that your handwriting is very good. Help me write a few words. Li Sun handed the brush to Qin Shuhua and said, I'm old. I can't even write properly. That's nonsense. It's very good. Qin Shuhua took the brush. Who can write such good calligraphy nowadays? Captain Li had written a sentence, strength to move mountains and unparalleled. But he only wrote 5 words. The word unparalleled was left blank. Qin Shuhua bent over and started writing. The old man looked at her brush through his muddy glasses and chuckled. It's been hard on you all these years. Qin Shuhua stopped writing and looked up at Li Sun. The old man didn't seem to notice that she was looking at him. His eyes didn't move away. He said, Li Xiao doesn't like to manage things. He thinks it's troublesome. He needs someone to worry about everything. Although you are a woman, there are many things in the family that you can make the right decisions. The old master said earnestly. The children have all grown up and have their own families. I was originally most worried about Bei Xing, but I didn't expect that Bei Xing would already have a family. Next up would be Jin Nan. Captain Shen looked at Qin Shuhua. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, but he smiled faintly. The children will have their own blessings. No matter what kind of girl Jin Nan finds, as his elders, we shouldn't interfere too much. Jin Nan naturally has his own plans for who he chooses and who she is. Dad. Chapter 1577. Nonsense. He'll definitely live to a ripe old age. There's still more than 20 years to go. Qin Shuhua's heart ached. She finished the last stroke and placed the brush back on the brush stand. Strength to pick up mountains, presence to conquer the world. This was definitely the best way to describe the old master when he was young. But, so many years had passed. Li Sun's name had become a legend. Now, this legend was slowly aging and facing the brink of extinction. Old Captain Li laughed. Life and death are decreed by fate. You don't have the final say. As he spoke, he clapped his hands and said, "Bring the children over." Now that Daesu has gone to the capital, Ursu probably isn't used to it. Bring them over to play. All right. The old man nodded and slowly walked back with the help of his walking stick. Qin Shuhua looked at old Captain Li's back for a long time before looking down at the piece of paper in front of her. Strength to pick up mountains, presence to conquer the world. The sound of handcuffs clanking against each other could be heard. Two female prison guards dressed in black walked into the prison cell with a short-haired woman in each arm. The woman was about 6 feet tall. She had a well-built build and looked a little tanned. She looked strong, and both her hands were cuffed. Even though there were 2 prison guards watching her, she continued to look around unscrupulously. She seemed to be chewing on something. She looked left and right as if searching for something. Many prisoners saw her, but none of them made a sound. No one was as frivolous as Yi Yuyu had been when she entered. Yi Yuyu stood in the crowd and laughed to herself when she saw the woman. Even the vicious criminals in the prison cells bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, before she could finish cursing in her heart, she seemed to feel a sharp gaze looking towards her. Yi Yuyu paused and looked at the short-haired woman. Their eyes met. The short-haired woman's eyes flashed with an almost imperceptible light. Imperceptibly, a wave of chill suddenly assaulted them. Yi Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, she hid behind the crowd. Go in. Behave yourself. The prison guard pushed the short-haired woman in. Her tone was harsh. The short-haired woman stumbled when she was pushed. She was in the cell in an instant, but she quickly steadied herself. Then, there was the sound of the iron door being slammed. Standing up straight, the short-haired woman straightened her clothes and smiled a bit sloppily. He licked the inner wall of his mouth, his tongue pushing against his cheeks. He swept his gaze across the crowd and didn't see the slightest bit of fear and awkwardness of a prisoner. Hey, old Joe, you're here again. Hearing the familiar voice, Yi Yuyu looked over. The person who spoke was called Wang Zhuang. She had a certain status in the prison, and many people were afraid of her. Not only because of her burly figure, but also because of her fiery personality. Moreover, the scariest thing was that she was quite skilled. Once they appeared, they would definitely be able to call for backup. It was Yi Yuyu's second day in prison. She wasn't familiar with the inmates at all. However, she did not dare to approach any of the people inside. When old Zhou heard Wang Zhuang shout, he turned his head to look. Old Zhou smiled and said, "Why haven't you left yet?" "I've been gone for 2 months. Bad luck. It was delayed." Wang Zhuang laughed out loud. "What did you do this time?" "Hey, don't talk about it," old Zhou said. "I was just stabbed by a B****. It could have been settled with some money, but they had to drag me in." "Hey," as old Zhou spoke, her eyes searched the crowd. Chapter 1578. Lao Zhou's gaze drifted over. When she saw Yi Yuyu, she seemed to smile. She quickly shifted her gaze to Wang Zhuang and asked, "Do you have any cigarettes?" Wang Zhuang laughed coldly and waved her hand. The person behind her immediately walked over and took out a pack of cigarettes. However, Elder Zhou wasn't polite at all. He lowered his eyes and took a look. Then, he snatched the entire pack of cigarettes. The girl behind Wang Zhuang was a little confused and looked at Wang Zhuang instinctively. When Wang Zhuang saw her expression, she sneered and said, "Look at you. Can't Sister Zhou take a pack of cigarettes?" The girl immediately lowered her head and said, "I wouldn't dare." Wang Zhuang patted the girl's arm and said, "From now on, call me Sister Zhou. With Sister Zhou's protection, you'll have a good life." Lao Zhou lit up a cigarette and grinned. Holding the cigarette between her fingers, Lao Zhou blew out a ring of smoke and said, "Don't stand on ceremony. In the future, remember to bring out all the good food, fun things, and easy things to bully. I've acknowledged you as my sister." Wang Zhuang was very happy and replied, "Of course. Based on our current relationship, there's no need for such formalities. However, I've found a particularly fun woman the past few days." "Oh. What does she look like?" "She's a prostitute. She was caught in the labor camp during the anti-prostitution crackdown. She has a big ass and big breasts, a oval face, and fair skin. She's a high-class chicken." Wang Zhuang lit a cigarette and smiled with desire. She gestured to the person beside her and said, "Go catch that chicken and let Sister Zhou take a look." Lao Zhou's interest was clearly piqued. Her gaze swept across the crowd. Such a conversation made one's hair stand on end. Lao Zhou and Wang Zhuang were both strong-looking women. Their hair had been shaved to a buzz cut. Their bodies were flat, and they looked fierce. If not for the fact that they were in a women's prison, it would have been difficult to associate them with the word woman. Many people had already begun to avoid them. Yi Yu turned around and walked to a corner. Soon, the high-class chicken that Wang Zhuang had mentioned was caught. She seemed to have been caught out of the blue and looked a little scared. When she saw that it was Wang Zhuang, she forced a smile and said, "Wang. Sister Wang, why are you looking for me?" Yi Yu looked at her and realized that her figure was indeed very good. She was tall and curvaceous. Her face looked very delicate, but her facial features were a little stiff. One look was enough to tell that her face had undergone surgery. At this moment, when he smiled with much difficulty, he actually couldn't be considered good-looking. However, Lao Zhou's gaze stopped on her large breasts. He said, "Not bad indeed. Come here and let me touch them." The woman was a little reluctant, but under Wang Zhuang's threatening gaze, she braced herself and walked up. Lao Zhou's hand was not courteous at all. He reached under her collar and grabbed it forcefully. However, this action caused him to frown deeply. She immediately retracted her hand and gave him a backhand slap. The woman whose breasts were grabbed was stunned and took a few steps back. Old Zhou spat and said, "I'm not here to play with saltwater bags." The woman covered her face contorted in anger. However, he didn't dare to say anything and shrank to the side. "I don't like this kind of trash. But, are there any pregnant women here recently? I've never played with a pregnant woman in my 30s. I recommend my gay friend Hua Rong's new book, The Most Spoiled Marriage of the Century, The Deep Kiss of the Husband. How does it feel to have sex with your own uncle? Not a good feeling." Chapter 1579. Pregnant Woman. The smile on Wang Zhuang's face froze. It's one thing for him to be naughty outside, but now that he's in prison, he still wants to play with a pregnant woman. Isn't that a little too hardcore? What's so fun about pregnant women? In this prison, they can't eat well or sleep well. Their complexions are all terrible. They're ugly to look at. They're worse than this. One of Wang Zhuang's subordinates spoke with a nonchalant expression. When Lao Zhou heard that, she turned her head and glanced at her. Her gaze was different from the ferocious look that Wang Zhuang had after spending so much time in prison. Instead, it was a kind of viciousness and hostility that she had never seen before. The person who spoke subconsciously took a step back, a little afraid. Lao Zhou didn't say anything when she saw that. She looked back at Wang Zhuang and asked, "Is there one?" "Yes, but it's already pitiful enough that the mother is locked up here." "You, pitiful." Lao Zhou acted as if she had heard a joke and said, "Which one of the people locked up here hasn't done something wrong?" Wang Zhuang still couldn't bear it. "But, what are you pretending for? Who doesn't know that you've killed a few chickens before? Are you trying to show mercy now?" Lao Zhou's words were very direct. Wang Zhuang's expression darkened, but he still waved his hand and ordered his subordinates to look for her. In this prison, other than the warden, Wang Zhuang was the boss. It was obvious that Wang Zhuang respected Lao Zhou very much. Or perhaps it was fear. Yi Yuyu wasn't the only one who could tell. Everyone else could as well. There weren't many pregnant women in the prison. There were more than 100 prisoners in the prison, but only 1 or 2 of them were pregnant. One of the subordinates brought over a pregnant woman who looked to be 7 or 8 months pregnant. It was obvious that the woman didn't know what was going on. She looked at Wang Zhuang with fear and respect in her eyes as she asked, "Sister Wang, what's the matter?" Wang Zhuang didn't dare look at her and replied, "This is Sister Zhou." "Greetings, Sister Zhou." The pregnant woman looked at Lao Zhou and smiled as she greeted, "Hello, Sister Zhou." Lao Zhou flicked the ash from her cigarette. Her face was filled with satisfaction as she looked at her belly. The pregnant woman felt a chill run down her spine when she was stared at like that. She subconsciously reached out and touched her belly. "Your belly button is protruding. Are you going to give birth?" The pregnant woman smiled. "Not yet. I still have about 2 more months." "Oh." Old Zhou's smile deepened. "That's good." The pregnant woman was stunned, not understanding what was going on. "Come with me, I'll give you a gift." When the pregnant woman heard this, she immediately waved her hand. "It's okay, Sister Zhou. You're too polite, you're welcome. We'll be family from now on." Oh, Zhou turned around and grabbed the pregnant lady's hand. "You'll like it." The pregnant woman felt uneasy, but she didn't dare to resist and followed them in. Yi Yuyu was at the back of the crowd. As she listened, she felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know why, but she seemed to feel that old Zhou was watching her. It was as if she had come specifically to find him. Moreover, the moment he came in, he asked for the pregnant woman by name, and his gaze kept lingering on her. This really made people think more about it. Yi Yuyu's heart had been hanging by a thread from the very beginning. This kind of uncertain hidden danger was very uncomfortable. Chapter 1580. The crowd quickly dispersed. Yi Yuyu didn't dare to speak to anyone. There were naturally people like her in prison. People who had been wrongly convicted or wrongly accused. But such people were in the minority. Yi Yuyu didn't dare to take the risk. So far, only she and the prison guards knew about her pregnancy. If this was known by the people inside, wouldn't she also end up being toyed with? Yi Yuyu lay in bed, feeling very uneasy. She closed her eyes and couldn't fall asleep. Suddenly, she heard footsteps and the sound of sobbing. From the sound, it was the pregnant woman. Yi Yuyu gripped the thin blanket tightly. She broke out in a cold sweat. "They're back. Lower your voice. Do you want to wake them up?" It was the voice of one of Wang Zhuang's subordinates. It sounded vicious. Yi Yu knew that there weren't many people asleep at the moment. But no one dared to speak. It was eerily quiet. The pregnant woman held it in and didn't dare to make another sound. She turned around and walked to her bed. She carefully sat down. The pregnant woman's bed was opposite Yi Yu's. She could clearly hear the commotion from above. Without a doubt, she was being bullied. Yi Yu's heart raced. She was terrified. She gripped the blanket tightly. She felt extremely wronged. There weren't many good people in prison. There were many people like Wang Zhuang and Lao Zhou. With a personality like hers, she would only be bullied in a place like this. She didn't have to go through all of this. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. Yi Yu's eyes burned. She gripped the blanket tightly and closed her eyes. Li Jinan, come and save me, do you want to continue staying here? Make me happy. The high and mighty voice was tinged with a morbid desire to conquer. In the darkness, the figure was like the projection of the devil. He smiled. But, to Shenmanting, that smile was no different from a nightmare. Shenmanting looked at the figure and retreated in a panic. However, no matter how she fled, no matter how far she went, that figure seemed to be a curse, forever following her from afar, relentlessly pursuing her. Do you think you can run away? His deep, husky, magnetic voice was like a death-reaping symphony. Without any room to hide, he suddenly attacked her. Shenmanting felt as if she had been pushed into a bottomless abyss. Suddenly, her body trembled. The night was short. Shenmanting lay on the bed, sweating profusely. Looking at the decaying ceiling above his head, he panted heavily, his chest heaving up and down. His back was drenched. In the August weather, the electric fan in the room swayed from side to side. The wind was not strong, but as the fan shook, it slowly swept over her body. She shuddered. He sat up. Everything around him that he had been familiar with for a long time was real. Not that mansion, and not the room he used to pamper her. There was no Shenluo and no Shen family, and no pain. However, Shenmanting's heart was so empty that she felt like she was about to suffocate. He reached out and placed his hand on his chest. Beads of water dripped from Shenmanting's forehead onto her arm. He got up and poured himself a glass of water. She slowly finished her drink and looked out of the window. The night in the small town was exceptionally quiet. Other than the chirping of insects, there was also the barking of dogs in the distance. There won't be Shenluo and Shenmanting muttered to herself as she caressed her lower abdomen. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.